What is up, legend? On the other side of the screen, happy New Year's, happy 2025. And to give you a jump start on your New Year's resolutions, I am gifting you an absolutely incredible conversation with the one and only Ben Azadi. For those that don't know, Ben is a leading voice in the health and wellness space. He's known as the health detective, and he is an expert on the ketogenic diet, intermittent fasting, and metabolic health. He's a best-selling author. He has a massive YouTube platform. His podcast has millions of downloads, and Ben is one of the most inspiring people I know. You know, he was suicidal, he was obese, his father passed away, and he overcame all of these obstacles and challenges to create an incredible life that he's living today. Not only is he super healthy, but he's created a beautiful relationship with his fiance, he's created financial abundance, and he's gonna actually share with you the secrets, the tools, the hacks that he has used in his own life to create this transformation. So buckle up, because you are in for a ride. Honestly, we should probably be charging tens of thousands of dollars for the information that we're sharing during this conversation, but because you're a legend, you get it for free. So do your best to be fully present, take some notes, and share some of these powerful lessons you learn with a loved one in your life. Now, let's get to the podcast with the one and only Ben Azadi. Oh man, Ben, my intention. First of all, I'm really happy just to connect with you selfishly. Like, it's been hard to connect because we're both busy doing our own things. Yeah. So just to be able to spend a couple hours together is really nice.
I love you, bro. I haven't seen you in, I think, over a year. And every time we get together, it's always special. This time it's going to be recorded for the audience's benefit. So thanks for having me back on your podcast, Jeremy.
Fuck yeah, bro. I'm really excited. Where is the best place to get started? I mean, there's so much happening on a global scale right now in the health space, right? I think so many people, especially in America, got sick and tired of the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And the demonic agenda that was being pushed. And I think things got so bad that people were forced to wake up and realize, oh shit, maybe the government, maybe the pharmaceutical industries don't actually have our best interests in mind. And I'm really grateful that it got to that point, because I think it had to go so far to the left for people to actually wake up and understand my health is my responsibility. And now with Make America Healthy Again and RFK and everyone coming in to this administration, there's a lot of momentum.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, the last couple months, you know, a lot of the work that we've been doing for the last, 5, 6, 7 years is now starting to go mainstream.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where are you kind of settled into all of this? Where are you seeing the direction of things going? And we can also start off by talking about the current health of America.
Yeah.
How we got here.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're right. We've been preaching this message for many years, metabolic health and mindset and just taking ownership over your own health. And it's cool to see it become mainstream. It's really cool to see this MAHA movement go to the mainstream. And now people are becoming aware of how important it is to prioritize their health. And of course, with COVID, I don't know if I could say COVID, but with COVID, we saw that be the case. And so many people started to understand maybe the government does not have my best interest in mind. So I'm going to share some stats that I've shared before, but now it lands differently because people are becoming aware of how important their health is. In 2016, Jeremy, Mayo Clinic had a study. They did a study to determine how healthy are Americans. How many Americans live an active, healthy lifestyle? And they used 4 criteria, okay? The first criteria was that they do not smoke cigarettes. The second criteria was that they exercise, moderate to vigorous exercise, for about 150 minutes per week total.
Okay.
The third criteria, they eat a healthy diet, which is minimally processed diet. That's the third criteria. The fourth one was that if they're a male, they have a body fat percentage of less than 20%, and female less than 29%.
Okay.
So out of those 4 criteria, they found that only 2.7% of Americans fit that criteria, meaning only 2.7% of Americans are actually what they consider healthy and active, bro. That was before COVID. That was before things got even worse. And I would estimate that that percentage is even worse off, right? So that's one stat. In 2018, another study came out showing that 88% of Americans have metabolic dysfunction, high blood pressure, high blood sugar levels, obesity, or they're overweight. 88%. Another study showed it's actually closer to 93%, right? Harvard is saying by the year 2030 that 50% of the population in the United States will be obese. Not just overweight, but obese. But obesity in 1930 was less than 1%. Now it's going to be 50%. People say, the government will say it's your genetics, right? They went on 60 Minutes last year saying, if you're obese, it's not your fault, it's your genetics. Our genes don't change that fast. Less than 1% in 1930 and close to 50% 2030.
That's insane.
It doesn't make any sense, right? So the CDC says 1 out of 2 men get cancer, 1 out of 3 women get cancer. They say that 60% of Americans are diabetic or pre-diabetic. And get this stat, by the year 2032, they're predicting that 1 in 2 children will be born autistic. Every other child will be born autistic, right? So we lack health in America and most first world countries. So what's the issue, right? Like, why are we so unhealthy? Why are we overweight? Why are we obese? Why do we have diabetes and cancer? Well, we could go and look at what the government teaches us and when it comes to health and nutrition, and we could do the complete opposite, and that'll get us down the right path for sure. But we have toxins in our environment. We have glyphosate in our food. We have people that are stuck burning sugar, and we could get down all those different avenues. But those are the stats, dude. And I believe with the Mahav movement, the work you do and I do, conversations like this, like we will put a dent in all those statistics and put a dent in disease so people could actually heal themselves. Because here's the truth. The body is built to heal itself. There's an inner intelligence in the body, this inner physician that God put within every cell that heals as long as we remove the interference, and we can get into some of the things that cause the interferences.
Yeah, man, that's so wild. And when we talk about obesity and this epidemic that's happening, it's crazy too how the mainstream media has almost glorified obesity. You look at like Sports Illustrated's swimsuit issue or Cosmopolitan, and they're intentionally putting these very overweight women on the cover. And what type of message is that sending to young girls? Like, they're aspiring for that. They want to be a cover girl. And it's crazy how if you have these conversations, you get called a fat shamer. You know what I mean? When it's really just like calling it as it is. This is an issue. I mean, we live in Miami Beach, so we don't see it as much.
Correct.
Because we live in a very healthy environment for the most part. But the kids, I want to dive deeper into this. Say that stat one more time about autism.
By the year 2032, they're predicting that 1 in 2 children will be born on the autism spectrum.
Right. And I believe like 60 years ago, that number was 1 in 1,500.
Yeah, it was rare. Yeah.
So what are the primary causes for that? Would you say, because I believe within the first 48 hours of a child being conceived, they're given about 70 different vaccines here in America. Is that accurate? And I know a lot of those contain heavy metals. So do you think that is a big reason for the autism numbers spiking? Or is it something else?
I don't know how many shots they're given within 48 hours. I know they're given shots. I would guess from my research, I would hypothesize that the reason why we see this increase in autism over the years, and it really started to ramp up in the late 1980s. So what happened in the late 1980s is that we allowed glyphosate into our food supply. So in the late 1980s, glyphosate started to be incorporated into our food supply. At that point, the rates of autism started to increase massively. And there's a researcher, Stephanie Seneff from MIT, who shows these strong correlations between the application of glyphosate in 1989 and the rates of autism, and it tracks exactly the same. The more glyphosate, the more autism rates we see. Now, I think that's one toxin. I also agree with you with the vaccines and shots that we get. There's heavy metals in them. And if a baby is just born or 6 months old, 3 months old, they're giving these vaccines, right? And the baby's brain is not developed. The baby's not designed to deal with the stress of these vaccines that contain these super toxins. It contains mercury, heavy metals like aluminum. It contains these super toxins, and the body has to deal with it. So I think it's a combination of all environmental toxins, not just the ones in vaccinations, but in our food supply, especially glyphosate. When you think about glyphosate, Jeremy, in Italy, they banned glyphosate in 2016. And if we think about Italy and the obesity conversation, they have a fraction of the obesity in Italy than they do here. But here's an interesting thing. They eat more carbohydrates in Italy than we do here.
Yeah.
And they don't exercise as much. There's a fraction of the gyms. They do walk. But you ask the question, why? Well, they banned glyphosate. They banned red dye. They banned all these artificial inflammatory ingredients. And that is why they're not seeing the obesity and diabetes crisis that we're seeing, because we still allow it in our food supply, at least for now. Hopefully this MAHA movement will get rid of them.
Have you been to Italy?
Not yet. You?
Yeah, I was there this summer, bro. And I was in Lake Como, Italy, and I would legitimately eat minimum one pizza a day to my face. Whole pizza. I would have a couple servings of gelato, and I was just walking a lot and being active. I wasn't lifting weights or anything. And I feel like I was at my peak of health and vitality there. Like my skin was glowing. I just felt pure. I felt cleansed. And it's wild how you can go to Europe and eat croissants, pizza, gelato, and not work out. And you can actually be more healthy than if you were to be super conscious and mindful of your food in America and hit the gym every day.
Yeah.
That's wild.
What a paradox, huh?
It's really wild.
It's the toxins. It's because they banned them in 2016. That is that's the only thing you could think of, right? I mean, there's nothing else that you could think of that's making this difference in their health versus our disease state here. They banned these toxins out of their food supply.
I wonder how much of the child stuff too is also, I don't know when baby formula became like a popular thing, but if you look at the ingredients of baby formula, it's like 30 or 40 different ingredients, seed oils, artificial sweeteners, and then you have things like Pedialyte, which is the #1 pediatrician recommended hydration beverage for infants, and it's got red 40 in it, acesulfame potassium.
Yeah.
And we wonder why so many kids are getting autism and so many children have ADHD. It's because we're feeding them all of these poisons and neurotoxins.
That's right. They're excitatory, these little chemicals and compounds in there. It makes their brain light up. Like you said, the ADHD, the ADD, the behavioral issues, it's in our food supply, right? We need to clean that up. That's one of the biggest reasons why we see these rates of disease in the United States. It's our food supply. It's toxic.
I want to actually take a moment and backtrack, because you've been one of the leaders in the holistic health space, the keto space, the metabolic health space for a while, probably a decade at this point. And you weren't always this beacon of light and health and vitality, right?
True.
You were yourself obese, suicidal.
Yeah.
And I'd love to just give the audience a little bit perspective of your journey. You know, we don't have to cover everything, but I think it's really important for people to understand where you came from and where you are now, because that's driven a lot of your passion. And this is why you're so connected to this work and your purpose.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah. So like you said, I was obese for most of my life, physically, mentally obese, followed a standard American diet. So ate a whole bunch of those processed foods that we mentioned. And as a kid, I had bad behaviors and addictions to drugs and video games. I don't know if you knew this, but man, I had such a video game addiction that I was one of the top players in the world in Madden and Call of Duty. I would like go to tournaments and win them all, like put a lot of energy into these addictions. And as an adult, 23 years old, back in 2007, I was going through a bad breakup with a girlfriend of mine, ex-girlfriend, and I was depressed. I was suicidal. I had to call friends to come over to my house because when I was alone, I would go on the internet and look for ways to end my life because I was tired of being in pain every single day, crying every single day. My whole body was inflamed. I was 250 pounds at this time. Just debilitating back pain, knee pain. Just walking through the mall, I would have to wear knee braces because I was just so inflamed. It was a really difficult time in my life. And I would have taken my life, by the way, but the only thing that stopped me was my mother. I kept thinking about my mom. I mean, I know how much you love your parents. I love my mom so much, and I didn't want to cause that sort of devastation for her. So it stopped me from taking my life. That's the only thing that stopped me, right? So I knew I had to figure things out. And that's when I started to first get into books on mindset and how your thoughts influence your cells and influence your body and disease or health. So I got into the work of Dr. Wayne Dyer and Bob Proctor, and of course, Tony Robbins. I know you were just with Tony at his event. And it really helped me take ownership and responsibility. I think that's the first step. Stop being the freaking victim of your history and start to be the victor of your destiny. You got to take responsibility, Jeremy, like you talk about, and you live that life. And most people don't even understand what that word means. Responsibility is your ability to respond to life. When your ability to respond to life is poor, you get poor results. So for me, my ability to respond to life was poor. I was the victim of a slow metabolism, enabling family members, bad genetics. Like I had all that stinking thinking sort of mindset. But when you take ownership and responsibility, you stop having those thoughts. You cannot take ownership and also have resentfulness and anger and be a victim at the same time. They cannot coexist.
So true.
So the second you take ownership is the second you start stepping into the greatness that you want to achieve. So for me, I lost 80 pounds in 9 months. I went from 250 pounds to at my lowest 6% body fat back then. 34% body fat to 6% body fat, 38 waist in my pants, Jeremy, to size 30, and completely changed my physical appearance, but also what it did for my mental health and my mental six pack, as I call it. So I've been there, right? For somebody watching and listening, if you're overweight or obese, like I was there for 23 years. And yeah, I have all the bad genes. My dad was obese. My dad had diabetes. He died from diabetes. I have those genes, but your genes don't control you. They're just a blueprint. You determine whether or not you want to turn on genes or turn them off. And you could change your genes with a single thought. You really can. And I'd love to get more into how we can do that. But you are in control of your destiny, your genetics, your bad behaviors in the past. That's not what's controlling your future. You make a decision to take ownership, like Jeremy talks about, and that's the first second you start to change your life.
Yeah. Yeah, bro, that's such a wild journey that you've been on. And, you know, it's interesting when I actually see someone who's overweight or obese, I actually see a lot of stored trauma and stored emotions, right? And how do we oftentimes deal with emotional pain?
You want to fill a void, eat, numb yourself.
Exactly. And in that moment, it's providing us instant gratification and pleasure, but it's just this evil, vicious cycle and hamster wheel that we get on. And that's why it's so important. Like at Tony Robbins, when I see like the overweight people there, I can see like as their mindset is shifting, as they're releasing some of these old stories and narratives that no longer serve them, they're able to finally take ownership and accountability of their health. And I think that's such an underrated, underestimated aspect of like weight loss and health in general.
Yes.
If you're continuing to hold on to anger, resentment, guilt, shame, all of those lower vibrations are getting stored in your physiology. And the only way that you can remove them is by actually allowing yourself to sit with the discomfort and feel those feelings fully and find healthy ways to actually process them, whether it's through breath work, whether it's through just fucking screaming. Sometimes you just need to yell and get that shit out of your subconscious mind and reprogram your belief system. And that's where I think a lot of the shifts start to happen. And your story is just another indication of that.
You nailed it. That's exactly it. So that's what I did, right? So one of the things that happened with me, Jeremy, is when I lost the weight and I went through this 80 pounds of weight loss transformation, my self-image was still of an obese person. So you cannot outperform your self-image. What I was starting to do was gain the weight back to be congruent with the self-image I had of myself. I was finding ways to kind of sabotage myself, go back to my old ways, because my self-image was, I was looking in the mirror at six-pack abs and I still felt like I was somebody who was obese. That was my self-image. It wasn't until I changed my self-image, and to Jeremy's point, it isn't until you change your self-image that you're going to be able to get sustainable results. You cannot outperform the self-image. It's like the autopilot on an airplane. When we take off, essentially the pilots on the airplane, they just set autopilot, and every time the plane goes off course, it course corrects until eventually they get to their destination. The pilots could essentially walk back to the plane and hang out with you because it's on autopilot. This is the same thing we do. If our self-image is that of somebody who's broke or unhealthy or whatever bad self-image we have, we set a goal, we start going to achieve the goal, and we will continue to course correct in a negative way to go back to be congruent with that self-image. So the only way to change the self-image is with a paradigm shift. Paradigm is where we have, you mentioned the subconscious mind. That's where we hold these habits. It's in our paradigm. And there's only two ways to change the paradigm. Number one, an emotional impact, right? And 9 times out of 10, it's negative. And it's unpredictable. But it could change your paradigm, change your self-image, change the way you think. Think of like a near-death experience. Sometimes it's positive. Like you could go to a Tony Robbins event and have an emotional impact, and it could change your paradigm. But that's rare. The second way to change your paradigm is constant spaced repetition. Okay, so what do I mean by that? That means you got to get the idea of this new self-image from your conscious mind into your subconscious mind. Once it replaces that, then you've changed your self-image. But you can't do that unless you keep affirming that new idea. So for me, I wrote down affirmations on an index card. I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm at my perfect weight. I'm happy, I'm healthy. The health I seek is now seeking me. I remove any interferences between us, right? So I would read this on a goal card and read it every day until I impressed it enough times to go into the subconscious mind. Once I did, the self-image changed and I stayed a lean, healthy person. That's the new self-image, right? This is the same thing for our finances, our relationships. I do this to this day, bro. In my pocket here, I have my goal cards. Like I carry it with me. I'm so happy and grateful now that, and I have a goal that I want to hit next year, another goal I want to hit next year. This is something that people poo-poo because they hear about the law of attraction. But I'm telling you, the law of attraction is a secondary law to the law of vibration. And the law of vibrations is your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. So people think they could just attract good things into their life by thinking it, but they're not understanding that they need to take action, right? It's your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions, right?
Yeah.
Once you start doing all those three things, then you attract that in your life. And a goal card or an affirmation is one of the best ways to do that. That's what I did with my self-image. And I think anybody who wants to achieve a goal, you just got to get it from the conscious mind to the subconscious mind by constant spaced repetition.
Yeah. And you have to shift your identity.
That's it.
I can really relate to that because, middle school, high school, college, like I was a pretty awkward looking kid. Like I had acne and I was just kind of goofy. I was skinny, like really skinny, middle school and high school, super pale, right? Very insecure, very awkward. And as I started to really invest in my health and I started working out and I just started to mature and evolve, I still held on to older parts of my identity, right? Like I wasn't worthy of this amount of money, or I wasn't worthy of this type of partner. So I was settling despite actually making these changes in my life. And it wasn't until actually shifting that identity to understand like, yo, I am worthy of receiving all of the abundance, all of the love, all of the money, all of the magic. That's when things started to shift. And it's still a process that's in progress now. And I think it's also important to understand, like when you're reading those affirmations, I'm sure you're not just like whispering them like, I am grateful, like you really have to infuse emotion into it.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what your subconscious mind responds to is emotion. So it's like, I am committed. I am courageous. I am grateful. And you say that enough and you start to make these shifts in your identity. You start to make these shifts in your subconscious mind and you literally become an upgraded version of yourself.
That's right. Dude, it's so good. So you're right. The more emotion you put into it, the faster it's going to happen for you. The more focus and emotion you put into these affirmations. When I drive my car, like I was driving here, I shout these affirmations in my car, just like shouting it out on the highway here at 95. And it's not woo-woo. These are universal laws. That, you may not believe in it. Like, let's say gravity, it's a world law, right? You may not believe in gravity, but I could hold something up and drop it right before you. Even if you don't believe in gravity, you see that it's the truth, right? So these are universal laws. Like what you think, what you feel, and what you act upon, you will draw into your life. And the more emotions you put into it, to your point, it happens even faster for you.
Yeah, I want to also talk about the law of vibration, like you mentioned. I think that's really important.
Yep.
What does the actual law of vibration say? Do you know it like word for word or no?
I don't know it word for word, but it states that your thoughts, feelings, and actions will get you your results in life, right? So your thought, let's unpack all three of those things, right? So your thoughts, we have about 60,000 thoughts a day. We both talk about this, right? And we know 90% of them are negative. or the same thoughts of yesterday, and then 85% are negative. And your thoughts determine how your cells function, right? Dr. Bruce Lipton has shown that, how a single thought is a frequency that has the ability to communicate with your DNA. And if it's a hateful thought, an angry thought, a resentful thought, that signal sent to your DNA creates inflammatory proteins where it damages your DNA and ages you faster. If it's a loving thought, an abundant thought, a grateful thought, same signal sent to your DNA, but now it's an anti-inflammatory protein, protects your telomeres around your cells and anti-ages you and extends your lifespan. So the first thing is to become aware of your thoughts. And I'd love for you to share more because you talk about this, but become aware of your thoughts. And if you find yourself in this like stinking thinking cycle of like repetition of negative thoughts and hateful thoughts and victim mindset, finding ways to transfer those thoughts to healthier thoughts, more abundant thoughts, and your environment controls that. But before we move on to the feelings and actions, Jeremy, what are some ways that we could do that in terms of our thoughts? If somebody's in that cycle of stinking thinking, what are your favorite ways to change that?
Well, what we were just talking about, I think, is really important too with the law of vibration. What comes through for me when I hear vibration is sound. And I think sometimes we underestimate the power of sound, right? Like, that's why activating your throat chakra, your voice, is so important. Like when you're saying these affirmations, you're also creating a sound. You're creating energy through your throat, which is really instrumental if you actually want to create that change with your thoughts on like a deeper level, right? A lasting change. And I think it's also, on the contrary, another destructive pattern that a lot of people fall into, and I was a victim to this for a while, is like listening to just horrible quality music.
Yeah.
Like I love certain rap and hip hop, but if you actually listen to the lyrics, some of them are just atrocious, especially like the newer rappers. I don't even know their names, but dude, some of the shit that people are listening to is just so toxic and inflammatory on their brain. You're letting these words penetrate your subconscious. So how are you going to think about money, life, health, women when you're listening to all these derogatory things? So I think it's also shifting what you listen to.
Yeah.
Like really being mindful and taking inventory of your information that you're allowing yourself to consume.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the effects of like just listening to the news, watching CNN, how that will impact your nervous system for an hour, right? But in regards to like shifting thoughts, I mean, for me, I think the two most critical times, if you really want to create a massive shift in your subconscious, is first thing in the morning and right before you go to bed. That's when your brain is most receptive to new information.
Yeah.
It's a sponge. So these affirmations that we're talking about, having them really dialed in the morning and before you go to bed, like having it as part of your non-negotiables. Like first thing in the morning, I have like a couple things that I read. One of them's like about financial abundance, and the other is just my mission statement. Like, I, Jeremy Abramson, see, know, hear, feel, and know. I repeated some of it. I, Jeremy Abramson, see, hear, feel, and know that I am a servant leader who is here to impact lives and create, fucking with my mission statement. I just came up with this at Tony Robbins, but I, Jeremy Abramson, am a servant leader who is here to inspire others to open their hearts, awaken their souls, and become the best version of themselves. Like saying that constantly first thing in the morning and before I go to bed really just reminds me. Anytime that other things start to penetrate that might not serve me, I always just come back to that. And I think really connecting with nature is extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really see anyone who is sad or depressed at the beach. You know what I mean? You're getting sunshine. You're getting all the minerals from the ocean. You're connecting with friends. Your shoes are off. You're disconnecting from technology. Like, if we just spent more time in nature, I think a lot of these problems would be solved. But the average American spending 93% of their day indoors.
Wild.
Whether it's at their office, at their home, in their car. And I think just getting outside and really understanding that we are part of this creation and experiencing that oneness and having that reminder that like, yo, I'm here for a reason. Sometimes there's nothing else that can really send that message to your subconscious than nature, in my experience. We can talk about microdosing too. I mean, psilocybin, here's the thing. When you get older, as you know, it becomes harder. There's a reason why our parents are so stubborn and stuck in their ways. It's because after the age of 25, it becomes really challenging to create these changes in your subconscious unless you're very intentional about it. Mm-hmm. So the beautiful thing about something like psilocybin mushrooms is that they increase levels of BDNF in the brain, which is a precursor for neuroplasticity. So with that neuroplasticity, we're able to create new thought patterns, new belief systems, new feelings and emotions, and ultimately change some of our habits and behaviors. And I don't think you need mushrooms to do that, but it can be a very powerful tool for people. So yeah, man, those are a couple things, but we can.
I love the mission statement, bro. Yeah, and I could feel the energy when you said it out loud.
It took me like 4 times to remind myself what it is.
You just traded it, right?
I wrote that. That was one of the day 6, like the final integration exercises.
So you read that every morning, every night before bed.
Yeah, and then it's with the core values.
Yeah,
it's with your relationship vision. It's with your mission. It's with your 1-year goals.
When you wake up in the morning, you're not looking at your phone first. You're not doing anything. This is the first thing you do.
Bro, it's so funny, Ben. I was thinking about this the other day because I don't know if you ever find yourself doom scrolling at all.
Yeah.
Like even though you're super conscious of it, right?
Yep.
I think at some point, no matter how mindful of a person you are, like we all get caught in those rabbit holes sometimes, whether it's 5 minutes or for some people 5 hours, and they just get sucked in. But one of the things that I've been thinking about, like if I do bring my phone in my bed, which I rarely ever do, when you're consuming a piece of content while you're in bed, first thing in the morning, and you're watching a video of some stranger on the internet, you are literally allowing that person in your bed with you. Your bed is your most intimate space, and you're letting this stranger's energy penetrate through the screen, and that's impacting your thought patterns. That's impacting your feelings, especially with all the comparison that happens. Mm-hmm. So you might see someone like pulling up in their Lambo while you're in bed and you're like getting started for the day. It's like, oh, fuck, I'm a piece of shit. You know what I mean? So yeah, first, that's a non-negotiable for me for the last like 5 years is airplane mode the first 60 minutes of my day. Because otherwise we're just reactive.
Yeah, I agree.
And as we continue to grow ourselves, our businesses, our families, like our lives are just going to get more busy.
Yeah.
So if we don't take that first 60 minutes for us to pour into our cup, we're just going to be behind the 8 ball the rest of the day.
I agree with you.
And we're going to be in that reactivity state, which is not a good place to be.
I agree with you. I'm the same way. I don't look at my phone. It's not even in my bedroom. It's in my kitchen on airplane mode overnight. I do my affirmations, my vision board, my goal. I write down my goals, my gratitude, all that's done. I walk my dog. Then the phone gets turned off or off of airplane mode. Now my fiance, Natasha, drives me crazy. She doesn't do that. So she gets the phone. She's in bed looking. I have these conversations with her, but she's still in the habit of doing that. But hopefully she'll come around soon. Very different lifestyle in the morning.
Yeah. And there's something nice about like a slow morning. Like maybe on a Saturday or Sunday, just like chilling in bed, relaxing. But I much rather just have a good book.
Yeah, me too.
You know what I mean? Because, dude, like we've been in this space for a while, and you know, the more it's crazy. It's crazy. Like, and I observed this, bro. Like I told you, I was in Italy this summer, right? And there's multiple occasions where I was at beautiful places in Italy, and I'm doing my best to just be present and observe and be so grateful for this human experience. And then I'll look to the left and right of me and I'll see people literally clicking on other people's Instagram stories. And I'm like, that's such a dangerous place to be when you're constantly in this game of just watching other people live their life instead of you actually living your own life. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest regrets people have on their deathbed of our generation is like, holy shit, I wish I would have spent less time watching other people live their life through a screen and spend more time me creating a life that I am proud of.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's something, boundaries are really important. It's like, Yeah, and when you have a partner, it's even more important, right? Because like that time to be present with your partner is where you build intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's no boundaries and you're just kind of like loose with your energy,
I agree.
I think it shrinks our vessel. At the end of the day, in like Kabbalah, I don't know if you're familiar with it.
No.
It's like Jewish mysticism and spirituality. But the whole idea is that there's God, the creator, and we're just vessels, right? Each one of us is just a vessel. And we have the ability to be a vessel of love and light and impact. But in order for that to happen, we have to build up our vessel so we can hold all of that energy and frequency. And every time that you're scrolling mindlessly, every time that you're jerking off and watching porn, every time that you're turning on CNN and watching all of this toxic news, anytime you're listening to horrible rap music that's destroying your subconscious mind, anytime you're drinking alcohol, you're shrinking your vessel. You're shrinking your ability to actually unleash your impact and do good in the world. And that's what I'm thinking about now. Like every activity, is this expanding my vessel or is it shrinking it?
Yeah.
And that's something I'm working through now is, I know you don't experience this because you've been in like a committed relationship for how long?
Gonna be 10 years soon.
It's wild, bro. That's amazing. But one of the things I think about too is like, it's very easy when a relationship ends to just satisfy your instant needs and desire for connection and intimacy by talking to a bunch of other women. And I've been guilty of that in the past. So the last 3 or 4 months, I've just been super intentional about who I'm even talking to and conversing with and texting with. Because if I'm talking to someone that I know ultimately like isn't my person, right? It's just satisfying this desire that I have in this moment. That's shrinking my vessel.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what it's also doing? It's blocking the blessings from actually entering my life of me attracting the person that I truly desire. So that's really the era that I'm in now, is analyzing all of my actions from that perspective. Am I shrinking my vessel or am I expanding my vessel? Because you and I are both on a mission to create as much impact as possible. And that requires a lot of energy, and it requires us to purify our priorities and not just be leaking energy everywhere. So that's a long-winded answer.
It's great. It's important. That's another law, by the way, what you just said, the law of vacuum prosperity. Nature abhors a vacuum, meaning you create a space and nature, God, fills that space, right? So like you just said, if you're using energy and resources for something that's not what you want, then it blocks other abundance from coming in. But when you create that space, then nature fulfills that space. And you could do this with like, I've seen people do this with like going into their closet and looking at their wardrobe and saying, anything I haven't worn in a year, I'm going to donate. And they create a space, and then they have all this new income come in to buy new clothes or to buy whatever they want, right? It's an example, a silly example of like the nature abhors a vacuum, the vacuum law of prosperity. So you have to create a space for the good to come in, right? If you keep blocking that by having things that are not important to you, it's hard for the abundance to come in.
Yeah, bro. I want to also talk about, you were one of the, I feel like you were one of the leaders these last 5 years of the keto movement.
Yeah.
Right. And I know that's helped you a lot on your journey. You helped hundreds, if not thousands of people on their journey, right? Go from sugar burner to fat burner. We can talk a little bit more about that. And then, what was it? 6 months ago, 12 months ago, you shifted your podcast name to the Metabolic Health Podcast?
Metabolic Freedom Podcast.
Metabolic Freedom. What triggered that shift? And maybe we can actually start, for the people that are listening, I'm sure they've maybe tried keto, certainly heard of keto. Can we just maybe do like a quick 101 on what keto is and what ketosis is? Yeah.
So when I gave the study earlier about 88% of Americans being metabolically unhealthy, they're essentially in a keto deficiency, right? They're stuck burning sugar. And there's nothing wrong with burning sugar and burning carbs unless you're only burning sugar and burning carbs. It's one of the fastest ways to age yourself, have high levels of blood sugar. You'll age yourself faster than anything else. And when you're burning sugar instead of fat, you are a sugar burner, right? So most people have forgotten how to burn fat. And that's all ketosis is. It's a byproduct. Ketones are a byproduct of burning body fat. So how do you get there? Easy. You need to lower the hormone insulin. And you lower insulin by looking at the 3 macronutrients. We have carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Every medical textbook shows us that it is carbohydrates that spike insulin more than any other macronutrient. So that makes sense to lower carbohydrates. So the first step is to get your carbohydrates under 50 total grams per day, total. At the same time, you increase healthy protein, healthy fat. You do that for 7 days, you're burning fat now instead of sugar. You've become fat adapted, right? 93% or so of people don't know how to do that. So that is the goal. And you don't stay in ketosis forever. You shift back and forth. You have days where you're burning fat, days where you're burning sugar. That is metabolic freedom. That's my definition of metabolic freedom. So there's nothing new about keto. It's just nuanced. It's been here for as long as humans have existed. It's not even a diet, Jeremy. It's a metabolic process. And the real fad diet is not a keto diet. It's a standard American diet. That's brand new, 50 years or so. Ketosis has been around for as long as humans have existed. Ever since the first human that was on planet Earth, they were using ketosis as a process, right? So that's all it is. It's just burning fat instead of sugar. Unfortunately, most people are stuck burning sugar. They forgot how to burn fat. And that's the first step to metabolic freedom, burn fat instead of sugar.
And how can fasting
Yeah,
be an ally for that?
they go hand in hand, right? Because with fasting, every hour you're in a fast, and I'm fasted right now, I haven't eaten yet today. Every hour you're in a fast, insulin continues to drop. You're going to burn body fat. Look, if you have extra weight right now, if you have 10 pounds, 100 pounds, 200 pounds of extra weight, you don't have a weight problem. Nobody has a weight problem. It's a weight symptom, okay? Don't just cut calories and focus on that. You talk a lot about this. It's not about the calories. It's about hormones. There's only one hormone that signals store fat. That's insulin, okay? 88% to 93% of Americans have high insulin levels. Ketosis and fasting are the 2 most powerful ways to lower insulin. And here's the thing with insulin, Jeremy. You could have high levels of insulin. Studies show for 6 to 14 years, you could have insulin resistance.
Right.
And your blood sugar levels look perfectly normal. Your A1C, which is a 3-month average of your blood sugars, look perfectly normal. Yet, you have insulin resistance. And what's happening is your body is cranking out insulin at such high levels that it's keeping those blood sugars in check until those beta cells, the pancreas produces insulin from the beta cells, are burnt out. And now all of a sudden you get diagnosed with prediabetes and diabetes. It happens like that. So the most important test that the audience could get, I talk about this in the book Metabolic Freedom, is a fasting insulin test. It's a blood test. It's cheap if you have to pay out of pocket. You want your fasting insulin to be in the single digits. Okay, if it's over 10, you got insulin resistance. And here's the crazy thing. The standard reference range on a fasting insulin, Jeremy, is between 3 and 25. Meaning your conventional doctor could take a fasting insulin, let's say you're 17 or 22, since you're in the range, they're going to say you're perfectly fine, you're healthy, but you actually have full-blown insulin resistance, and it's just a matter of time before that turns into diabetes, and diabetes turns into cancer and heart disease, right? So the goal, to answer your question on the fasting, is to lower insulin, and ketosis first, then fasting is one of the best ways to lower blood insulin levels.
I'm glad that we're launching this podcast January 3rd.
Oh, nice.
That's when it's going out. Because I wanted this to be a crash course for people to just start off 2025 off with a lot of momentum. And I want to just simplify as many of these subjects that sometimes get complex and complicated. But one of your gifts is being able to communicate these complex things in a very simple way where someone can just implement it in their life and see for themselves what type of changes and impact they're noticing. So we're removing a bunch of the carbohydrates. And I know you have like this protocol, right? 2-2-2-2.
Yeah.
Is that still
part of the protocol? It's
perfect?
book,
Because what I want to do in this conversation is really give people actionable items that they can implement today and start seeing some of their changes shifting.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of the quick changes, you know, obviously from seed oils to healthy fats and stuff like that, trading in your plastic for glass, and doing some of those simple things that we can drop in about. But the 2-2-2 thing, I think is really important.
Yeah.
and just explain what that's doing maybe on a mitochondrial level as well.
Yeah. Okay. And I have some new studies on the seed oils, by the way, we'll get into some new stuff. Really, really cool
Let's
stuff.
go.
So the first step that I gave your audience was to lower the carbs, right? If you're eating 300 grams of carbs per day, like the average person is, I don't want you to go from 300 grams of carbs to under 50 total grams of carbs in a day, right? That's too much of a shift. You're going to have symptoms. You're going to get the keto flu. You don't have to go through that. So gradual decrease in carbs. So let's say like a 20% reduction. But on day 7 of doing this, you should be under 50 grams of carbs. So that's the first step. The second step that you do in conjunction with the first step is that 2-2-2 rule. So on day 1, you want to eat 2 tablespoons of grass-fed butter or grass-fed ghee, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, Jeremy's favorite, the oleocanthals, or avocado oil, and then 2 tablespoons of coconut oil or MCT oil. These are healthy fats, saturated fats, monounsaturated fats. What you're doing here, with lowering the carbs, you're going to lower insulin. Your body's used to burning sugar, so we need to give it a different fuel source. So you eat these healthy fats as a reminder, oh, you're low on sugar, which is a good thing here. Let's burn these fats for fuel, these fatty acids, so it helps you produce ketones. So one more thing you want to add into the mix is high quality salt and electrolytes. Because as you lower insulin, you get to get rid of all this excess water weight, which is great, but you also lose a lot of electrolytes. So you want to do on day 1, 1 to 2 pinches or teaspoons of like sea salt, like Redmond's real salt, or some high quality electrolyte minerals. So that you do that for 7 days. So you don't have to do that 2-2-2 rule forever. You do it for the first 7 days, and you should be in ketosis by just day 7, meaning you're burning fat instead of sugar. You could test your blood ketones, and if it shows 0.5, you're in ketosis, but you don't have to. You'll notice that you have more energy, sleeping better, less inflammation. Like you'll know these signs that you're in ketosis, you're burning fat instead of sugar. That's the first step, right? Once you do that, and it should take you 7 days, then you pair that with intermittent fasting, right? You do an 18-6, right? An 18-6 means out of a 24-hour period for 18 hours, you're fasted, right? What can you have? Water, coffee, tea, supplements, but no food for 18 hours. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, that sounds crazy. That sounds extreme, but you're burning fat now instead of sugar. And when those ketones are in your body, it helps you feel full and satiated, where you actually feel good during a fast instead of the opposite person who's a sugar burner and they feel awful. So 18 hours fasted, then you have a 6-hour eating window. That could be from 12 to 6 p.m. or 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., however you want to do it. But that's where you have your meals, 2 to 3 meals, focusing on protein. Protein is the most important macronutrient at this time. You want to get 1 gram of protein per pound of your ideal body weight.
Got it.
So let me give that to unpack that with the audience. So if you weigh 180 pounds, but your goal weight is 130 pounds, you want to consume 130 grams of protein each day in that window. Now, the fats you're having on ketosis are important, or in keto, I should say, are important, because a lot of people do keto and they eat these fats that are even more inflammatory than when they were burning sugar, right? These fats are in 80%. They're in 80% of our food supply, bro. Seed oils, vegetable oils, 80%.
Wild.
And I want to make it clear, because we're going to get people that will create some of those reaction videos to this saying seed oils are not bad for you. But let me address them first. Not all seed oils are bad for you. It's not that it's a seed oil and that's what makes it bad. That's not true. Seed oils, if they're processed the right way, organic, cold pressed, and you're not heating them up like frying them, you're using them for salad dressings and dips, are really healthy for you. But 95% of the seed oils out there are the processed inflammatory type of fats. And when you consume them, they are in your body for years. I always give that stat of Dr. Kate Shanahan, who is Kobe Bryant's nutritionist, right? She used to work for the Lakers. She was Kobe's nutritionist. Dwight Howard, like she got the whole team off of seed oils on bone broth. She's a New York Times bestselling author, medical doctor, and a great friend of mine. And I asked her the question. I said, Dr. Kate, I'm going to give you 3 scenarios. Which scenario leads to disease faster? Number 1, smoking cigarettes every day. Number 2, eating processed sugar every day. And number 3, eating these vegetable oils every day. And she laughed and said, easy, it's the vegetable oils, hands down. She said, smoking cigarettes, not good for you, but once you finish the last puff, done your damage. Eating processed sugar, not good for you, but what happens after you eat processed sugar? Your blood sugar levels go up and they go back down. You could exercise, you could burn it off. But these seed oils, they are in your body. The half-life is 680 days.
It's fucking wild.
So
2 years.
2 years. Meaning if you stop eating them today, and I'll give your audience an entire list in a second. If you stop eating them today, 2 years later, they're in your body fat, around your cells, around your mitochondria, creating low-grade inflammation. And here's a new study. I put this in my book, Metabolic Freedom. This guy named Dr. Martin Grudfeld did a study where he analyzed French fries, like for example, McDonald's, they fry in vegetable oils, 5-ounce serving of French fries, which is about 20 to 25 French fries, produced the same amount of aldehydes. Aldehydes are carcinogenic, they're cancer causing. And it produced the same amount of these aldehydes as 20 to 25 tobacco cigarettes smoked, meaning one French fry eaten from McDonald's is equivalent to a tobacco cigarette smoked when it comes to the aldehydes produced.
That's really devastating for me to hear. French fries are
Sorry, bro.
my kryptonite, especially sweet potato fries. So it's pretty much any French fries that have been cooked in seed oils, not just from McDonald's.
It's what they're, yeah, correct. And it's what they're cooked in, right? Let me give your audience the list, then we could dive a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
So the ones you want to avoid are canola, corn, and cottonseed oil, soybean, safflower, sunflower oil, rice bran oil, and grapeseed oil. That's what Dr. Kate Shanahan calls the hateful eight. I would throw fish oil in that category. It's not a seed oil, but it's just as inflammatory. I mean, you could go into it if you want, but fish oil is not good for you. These are called polyunsaturated fats. The word poly means many. It has many double bonds, making it very unstable when it attracts oxygen and heat. I mean, just go on YouTube and type in how canola oil is made.
That video
disgusting,
is wild.
right? Shows you they use detergents and high heat. It's like, and they put it in a bottle. And the American Heart Association, who you call out all the time, Jeremy, puts their stamp of approval on these oils, and they create more disease, heart disease, than anything else, right? So we want to swap those for saturated fats and monounsaturated fats. These are fats that are stable. So we have a lot of the ones I mentioned earlier: coconut oil, avocado oil, olive oil, beef tallow, butter, ghee, duck fat, even lard from like organic pigs. These are healthier fats that we want to use. And if you ate French fries cooked in beef tallow, it's great.
Could be a superfood.
Could be healthy for you, right? As long as you're metabolically healthy and able to do carbs, yeah, it could be healthy. I would have it personally. It's healthy for you.
Do you know if there's any restaurants? I know there's the Seed Oil Scout app. Do you use that?
So I don't use it, but it's a great app. Here's what I do. When I go to restaurants, I probably have told you about this before. When I go to restaurants, I show them my seed oil allergy card.
No way. Let me see that.
Oh yeah, here you go. I brought you a few. Here you go. That's for you. You can take them all. So on here, and I don't know if the camera could pick it up, so I'll read it. On here it says, "Dear chef, I have food allergies to vegetable oils. In order for me to avoid an allergic reaction, I must avoid everything marked off below." So it shows the bad fats I mentioned. The following alternatives are safe, and it shows the healthier options. So when I go to restaurants, I show this to the server, they bring it back to the chef, and they accommodate. You avoid taking the hit.
This is amazing, bro.
Seedoilcard.com. Anybody could get it for free. Seed oil. And I brought some for you guys too.
Ben, I'm going to ask your permission for me to like recreate this for my community.
You have my permission. It's all about the mission, not the ego. So do it, bro.
This is amazing because, again, going back to the importance of speaking our truth and sound and activating our voice, right? Most people know that these seed oils are destroying their health, right? They're super harmful in many different ways. But when it comes to eating out at a restaurant, oftentimes it can feel uncomfortable.
That's right.
To mention to the waitress or the chef, like, hey, you know what? I'm actually allergic to canola oil or soybean oil. Can you use butter or olive oil instead? Because that does take a little bit of courage.
Yeah.
And if you actually want to be the author of your own book and create true health and healing, you need to speak up for yourself because no one else is going to do it. So next time you're at a restaurant and they ask you if you have any allergies, just kindly say, yes, you know, I can't have these industrial seed oils, canola, soybean, etc. May you please replace it with butter or extra virgin olive oil. And most of the time they'll accommodate you.
That's right.
And not only are you taking care of your health, but you're actually building confidence, speaking up for yourself.
It's a good point. That's exactly, that's a good point because for years I would tell my students to verbally express that they're allergic to vegetable oils. And like you said, they were uncomfortable doing it. And I would follow up with them and they weren't doing it. which is, it's important to build that courage. And like you said, it stacks this muscle, it develops this muscle. So I created the card because it makes it easier for them, right? You just show it to the server, they bring it back to them. So the card works like a charm. But like you said, Jeremy, you got to take ownership here. Going back to the beginning of the conversation, like this is so important. These oils stay in your body for years. You take that hit, they're going to create inflammation for years, and you don't have to take that hit. Restaurants will accommodate. They'll give you different options, and you'll be surprised. Even like fancy restaurants in Miami, they use vegetable oils, and sometimes they'll even marinate their steaks in vegetable oils. You have to ask and know for sure.
And I want to also add on top of that with the fasting idea, right?
Yep.
I found for myself, when I am most aligned energetically and I look the most fit and shredded is when I'm consistently doing fasted cardio.
Same.
So first thing in the morning, first hour of the day while I'm in a glycogen depleted state, like even just going on the Stairmaster for 10 minutes or going for a walk or getting in some sprints or doing some stretching, any sort of movement, especially if it gets you sweating and it gets your heart rate up a little bit while you're in a fasted state, is going to make such an impact on your physiology. So anyone who wants to just put this to the test, try this each morning. 10, 15 minutes of just movement. If you have a dog, walk your dog during that time. And I think people will be surprised at how that little action will make a massive impact.
I agree. And it could be just the walk, like you said. You're metabolically healthy and flexible, so you could work out. I can too in a fasted state. Most people who are sugar burners can't do that, but they could go for a walk. And you're right. Walking is one of the best things you could do for fat loss, by the way. It's so underrated. It's great for longevity. It's great for fat loss. There was a study looking at 50,000 people, and they found that those who walked 5,000 to 7,000 steps a day, which is not a lot, had a 65% less chance of dying from all-cause mortality versus those who got less than 3,000 steps a day.
This is one of the reasons why I sold my car too, a couple years ago. And I just have a city bike membership and I walk places, and that's when I get my best thinking in.
Yeah. There's so many benefits to it.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy. Like, and again, going back to Europe, you just see the lifestyle. Like even when I was living in Israel, you don't see any fat people, bro. Really, like people are just walking, they're getting active, they're connecting with other humans. They're not staring at a screen all day, and they're just being intentional about the way that they live their life.
Yeah. The only fat people we see are the American tourists.
Yeah. No, it's really, I think if anyone, and that's another crazy statistic, by the way, I'm pretty sure only 5 to 10% of Americans use their passport. So
that's it, huh?
Yeah. So like 90% of Americans haven't even left the country. And it's really interesting when I go to different countries, they kind of joke about Americans just like only speaking one language, kind of being culturally illiterate. And it's kind of true to an extent, right? I think we just got to use our passports more, man. Like traveling. Do you have anything on your bucket list, by the way, for 2025? Any destinations?
Going to Cabo next month, speaking at an event with Gary Brecka, Josh Axe, Pampa.
Let's go.
End of January. And then, so me and Natasha are going to get married next year. Not going to have a wedding. We're just going to get married because we both don't want a wedding. And then we're going to go to Europe and Greece for a month. That's something that's on my bucket list.
Baby.
Yeah. So we'll use that passport well, my friend. What about you? I know you're going to Israel.
Yeah, I think a couple places that I'll probably go are Thailand, Bali.
Nice.
Those have been on my bucket list for a while. I don't know. We'll see. A lot of my life these days is kind of unexpected sometimes. Like I have my consistent things, and then if certain opportunities open up, then I entertain those. And the interesting destination I'm probably going to go to this year, actually, in 2025, is Germany. And for my entire life, I've had this trigger and trauma when I even hear Germany mentioned. Yeah, from the Holocaust 80 years ago. And what's interesting about that is I've met so many amazing Germans. A lot of them were at Tony Robbins. I meet them whenever I travel. You'll always meet a lot of Germans. And a German person came to one of my mushroom ceremonies, and she's like, I want you to actually come to Germany. My boyfriend lives there, super well connected. I'd love to have a ceremony out there. And I was like, okay, the stars are aligning for me to go to Germany. And I feel like generationally, this could be good for healing some of the things from my lineage. So I'm probably going to go to Germany this year.
That's awesome, bro. I'm glad you're doing that.
Yeah, when it gets a little warmer.
Yeah. Well, the media tells us who we should hate.
Yeah.
My parents are from Iran, right? We should hate each other.
Well, dude, the thing is, the people of Iran are amazing.
No, I agree. But if you just watch the news, like people from Israel should hate people of Iran. Like we should technically hate each other because that's what the media tells us to do.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, man, some of my favorite people that I've ever met are from Iran. They're Persian. Persian people.
Same thing with Jewish people. Like I have so many Jewish friends, including you, that I love. Yeah.
Persian people, bro, for the most part, super hardworking, very entrepreneurial. Their food, oh my gosh, that rice. Yeah. What's that rice called? That's like burnt at the bottom.
It's called tadik. It's like
tadik.
Yeah.
That shit
My mom
is
makes
so
that, by the way.
Fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just really unfortunate, man. Like when I actually look at the situation in the Middle East and I see all of these people in Iran, for example, who are amazing people, bro. They deserve so much better.
Yeah.
And they've been overrun by, a terrorist regime that just wants to destroy and kill. It's really sad to see that. Like the Iranian people deserve better. And I'm hoping that with Trump coming in office.
Me too, bro.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful history, beautiful country.
It used to be, so Beirut, Lebanon, and also Iran used to be like the Paris of the Middle East back in the 70s and 80s, I believe.
Yeah.
That's where people would go. Like that's where a lot of wealth was.
That's right.
And the beaches there in Lebanon especially are beautiful. So
things could change fast, bro.
Yeah, no,
it's for the
wild.
better or for the worse, right? I mean, we got a little scary here in the United States.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It did get scary. I want to know from your perspective, like one of the things that I think I also love about you is that you can bust a lot of myths. So, there's a lot of things out there where it's like, is this healthy? Is this not healthy? You can find articles that say coffee is amazingly healthy and it's a rich source of antioxidants, right? If you're drinking purity coffee, and then other people say coffee causes cancer and it's destructive, right? So can we just talk a little bit about veganism? Because sometimes I will just post a video of me eating a juicy burger and I'll be like, yo, I'm sorry for all my vegan friends that'll never be able to experience this, and it'll always get a couple of comments like unfollow.
Of course.
But what's interesting, I wonder if you could also potentially talk about the repercussions of a vegan diet on the environment. All of the animals that are killed in the process, oftentimes of cultivating all of the other crops. I don't know if you've gone down that rabbit hole.
Not too much, but I know some of what it's doing to the environment, not that specifically.
Yeah. So
if you could share.
Well, no, I mean, we talk about when we're talking about like being metabolically healthy and transitioning so we're metabolically flexible and potentially experimenting with keto, healthy fats, healthy proteins are essential, right? But do you think vegans can get substantial protein from rich sources and healthy fats from rich sources in enough quantity to actually be thriving?
I think it's really difficult to do that as a plant-based person. We're not designed to be plant-based long-term. Like, arguably, do it for a month. Maybe there's some short-term benefits. It could be a short-term stress. But man, the longer you do plant-based or a vegan diet, the more detrimental it's going to be for your health. I mean, first of all, cholesterol, right? A lot of people do vegan diet because they have high cholesterol. But more people die from heart disease with normal to low cholesterol than high cholesterol. I mean, cholesterol builds all of your hormones, including your sex hormones. It's majority of your brain and your cells. So vegans are going to starve their hormones over time. They're going to starve their brain. They're going to have behavioral issues, cognitive issues. They're not getting the right nutrients in terms of their hormones, or not producing the adequate amounts over time. I'm not saying this will happen right away. Protein, they're going to be in a protein deficit, and in some ways malnourished. And we talked about how protein is the most important macronutrient. Well, yeah, they could get 100 grams or 135 grams of plant-based protein if that's their target, but it's not complete. There's no such thing as a complete protein in the plant-based world, and you can mix different plants to make it complete. Yes, but then the other thing is that plants have these anti-nutrients in them, oxalates and tannins and lectins. Plants don't want to be eaten, right? They don't have any kind of defense mechanism other than creating chemicals inside of their plant bodies, right? For example, humans, like you and I, and animals, we have defense mechanisms. If a predator approaches us, we could fight them with our arms, we could run away with our legs, we could bite them with our teeth. Animals could do that too. Plants don't have these things. So what did they do to survive over so many years? They developed these defense chemicals where if a predator ate them like a human being, the predator got sick and remembered, I'm not going to eat that plant again. I got sick, right? Plants all contain these anti-nutrients, and they create inflammation in your gut. They create inflammation in your brain. They create a leaky gut-brain connection, and you are going to have some problems long-term with a vegan diet. Now, your genetics and your stress bucket will determine how long that will take. For some person, for one individual, they could have serious problems like within months. Other people it could be 3 years or 6 years, but it's a matter of time. It's a matter of time where one of them someday will have some health issues. You just can't thrive on a plant-based diet.
Yeah, well, it's interesting too with when we talk about healthy fats, specifically like the DHA and EPA. It's very hard to find rich sources of DHA and EPA in plant-based foods.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? We're talking like grass-fed meat, egg yolks,
yes,
wild-caught salmon.
Yeah.
Like these are the foods that are going to provide us the nutrients that are actually going to boost our brain health.
Yeah.
And if you're vegan or plant-based, where do you go for that? I mean, I think spirulina potentially is a good source, but most of the plant-based sources are all ALA, which don't really convert to EPA and DHA, right?
Yeah, that's true. And it takes a lot longer to convert them. But we don't need that much EPA and DHA. A lot of people, they get too much with fish oil, but we do need enough. And vegans don't get enough, to your point. So there are some plant-based vitamins or fats that could get you enough EPA and DHA. But that doesn't solve the hormone issue. That doesn't solve the complete protein issue. I'm not against the vegan diet. I mean, you know me. I'm not for any diet long term. I think all diets work short term. It's about variation. Like our ancestors varied their diet. Yeah, there were some times, maybe weeks or months, where they only ate plants or maybe fruit because that's all they had available. But when they had meat available, that was the go-to. Meat was valued. It's complete protein. It's nutrient dense. It's far superior than any kale or spinach out there. Which, by the way, kale and spinach are not healthy for you at all. They're loaded with anti-nutrients, especially spinach. Spinach is probably the worst vegetable that most people eat when they're eating a healthy diet. Spinach has loaded with oxalates, creates inflammation in your gut. People juice spinach. You want to stay away from spinach. It's one of the worst things you can consume. And almonds as well, by the way. Almonds are loaded with oxalates. It's something that I never eat. Almonds, almond milk, almond flour, it'll create
almond butter, I'm assuming.
Almond butter, yeah. Ooh. Yeah, I would stay away from too much of that.
Wow.
It just has too many.
I didn't know that about almonds.
It has a lot of oxalates in it. Yeah.
What about if you soak them?
Better. Yeah, it breaks down the oxalates. Yeah, if you could soak them or find soaked almonds, like soaked almond butter, or sprouted, better for you.
Dude, it's wild, the world that we're living in. That's why you're such an important voice. You know?
It's a lot of nuances.
Yeah.
So much nuances. I did, do you know about my experiment, my 90-day carnivore experiment?
I know of it. I don't think I've dove super deep with you about that.
Can I share some insights from it?
Yeah.
Because it just flies in the face of the vegan movement.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to do, and of course, this is just my experiment, but I did 90 straight days of just eating meat. But before I did that, I did $3,500 worth of blood work. So all the inflammatory markers, complete thyroid panel, hormone panel, of course, A1C, insulin, everything.
Insane.
I did a stool test on day one, looking at my gut microbiome, and then I did 90 straight days of carnivore, which is just meat. I I lost 16 pounds in 90 days. I lost about 3% body fat shaved off of me. My sleep was better. My HRV, heart rate variability, was better. I just felt better overall. Mental clarity, skin, everything improved. But the labs were interesting. The stool test on day one, when I got back the results, it said that my diversity in my gut was average. It said, you're not in bad shape, you're not in great shape, you're kind of like mid. So it said on the lab, in order to increase your diversity, you got to eat more fruits and vegetables.
Okay.
More fiber, more plants, it said less keto, less meat. I did the complete opposite. This is day one going into carnivore. I did the complete opposite. So you would think on day 90, when I retested that gut test, it would be a disaster, Jeremy. But when I retested the gut test, everything in my gut microbiome improved. My diversity. I developed 5 keystone bacteria on day 90 that was not there on day 1, and 7 core bacteria by just eating meat. 0 fiber, 0 vegetables. And all of my labs looked amazing. Inflammation got better. Like everything improved on day 90, right? So it's the exact opposite of what people think to get healthy. They think red meat causes cancer. Eating all that cholesterol is going to cause heart disease. It's bullshit. You know, the statin industry made $13 billion last year. They don't want you to know the truth that cholesterol is vital for functioning and thriving. It is one of the most important things to build your hormones, support your liver, to support vitamin D production. Statins do the exact opposite and deplete this very important thing in your body called a hormone called cholesterol, or substance called cholesterol. And one more thing, Jeremy, because I love talking about cholesterol, and this always goes viral when I talk about this, so I'm going to share it real quick.
Let's go fucking viral.
Let's go viral. The reason why so many people think cholesterol causes heart disease is from flawed research in the 1950s, dude.
Ancel Keys,
right? This guy, an oceanographer who was working with the United States government, had a hypothesis. This is a guess. A hypothesis is a guess. He said, I think we are seeing higher rates of heart disease because people are eating more fat, cholesterol, and saturated fat. So he did a 22-country study to prove his hypothesis, where he looked at the top 22 countries that had the top 22 highest rates of heart disease. He wanted to show that they also consume the most cholesterol and saturated fat. When he did the study, he only found that 7 out of the 22 countries fit the hypothesis, but he didn't share that it was a 22-country study. He now said it's only a 7-country study because all the other countries didn't match the hypothesis. But here's the thing. Out of those 7 countries that he showed had the highest rates of heart disease and highest consumption of saturated fat, they were not consuming saturated fat. They were consuming high amounts of margarine, fake fats, right? So he gave this information to the government. That's where this low-fat crave boomed, right? And the reason why he and so many cardiologists to this day that make videos about me on TikTok and Instagram still believe cholesterol causes heart disease is because when they do an autopsy on somebody who's had a heart attack, they see all this cholesterol built up in their arteries, this waxy substance. So they say that's what caused the heart attack, the stroke, whatever it was. But that's like saying, hey, every time there's a fire in my neighborhood, I notice firefighters at the scene of the crime. Every time there's a fire, there are firefighters. So they must have caused the fire. Well, the firefighters were there to put out the fire. The cholesterol is there to put out the inflammation. Cholesterol is an antioxidant. It's for inflammation. It's not the cholesterol that caused the heart disease. It's the cholesterol that's there to repair the damage from whatever inflammatory response. So don't be afraid of cholesterol. One more thing on cholesterol. If your total cholesterol is under 200, it lowers nitric oxide, which leads to erectile dysfunction and leads to heart disease. It's the complete opposite of what you have been taught.
When do you think this information will get mainstream? Because I still feel like there's a lot of smart people that fear having high cholesterol, and statins are still super prevalent in today's medical scene. Like, when is that going to be fully exposed? Because I know the conversations are happening, but the amount of people that are being put on statins, and when someone is incorrectly put on statins and they're just getting treated for these symptoms rather than actually identifying the root cause, what are the health repercussions of taking statins?
It actually leads to congestive heart failure because it weakens your mitochondria. It leads to erectile dysfunction, mood disorders because you're starving, kind of like a vegan, you're starving your sex hormones and hormones in general by not having enough cholesterol. Dude, I remember my fiance Natasha when we first met, she was working at a corporate job, and she would tell me that, and I think this corporate job is not the only job or company that does this, but she would tell me that her job would reward the employees that had the lowest amount of cholesterol. Like they were looking at that as like a benefit for like their life or health insurance policy. And people still believe that's what you want to do. You want to get your cholesterol as low as possible, but you're going to have more symptoms with low cholesterol versus high cholesterol. When I did my labs, Jeremy, my total cholesterol on day 1 was 350. That's already like super high to a cardiologist. On day 90, it went to 430.
Wow.
Right? But I did all of the inflammatory markers. I got the particle sizes done. Everything was optimal. I even had a heart surgeon, Dr. Philip Bavadia, review my results. And what he said, this guy operates on freaking hearts. He does procedures. He understands heart disease. He essentially said, and you could watch this on YouTube, the whole videos, if you go to youtube.com and type in Ben Azadi carnivore, it's on there. But he essentially said, you were at very low risk of heart disease on day 1. And then after eating nothing but meat and cholesterol for 90 days, you're at even lower risk of heart disease. Even though my cholesterol went up, even though my LDL went up, because we looked at all the particles and inflammation markers, which gives you a full picture. It's not, cholesterol is meaningless as a marker. It doesn't tell you anything. You got to look at a full picture of what's happening.
And yeah, bro, it's so wild. It's crazy too that it's really becoming a doctor in 2025.
Yeah.
It almost seems like insignificant. Like, why would you want to pursue that path other than actually like the prominence or the appearance of like, I'm significant because I'm a doctor? But we're seeing how many flaws there are in the healthcare system, in the medical system, and the whole medical school process. I mean, it's 7 years, and I think the average doctor learns less than 20 hours of nutritional content in those 7 years. And most of that content is probably outdated garbage that's being funded by big food and big pharma. And then I think the cholesterol thing is so crazy too, because I think about my dad, and you've talked to my dad a couple of times. My dad loves you, bro.
I love your dad. I love that guy.
Bro, I just remember being a kid, and whenever we would go out to eat breakfast, my dad was the king of the egg white omelet.
Yeah.
And the egg beaters that are getting cooked on seed oils. And he thinks he's being healthy, as do many other people.
It's true.
And egg yolks are actually a superfood for your brain.
It is.
Right? Cholesterol, all the B vitamins, the choline, what else is in the egg yolk?
Yeah, it has the EPA and DHA, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
It has the quality fats that build your cell membranes, like the saturated fats. It's Mother Nature's multivitamin. It's amazing for your liver, the choline. Choline is one of the most important nutrients for your liver. And so many people have fatty liver disease. They need to eat more eggs. So I mean, you still go to restaurants in Miami that are healthy, right? And they'll have this egg white option, right? Or a vegan option, thinking that it's healthy, but that's still the mainstream thought process. Have you been to LA, Jeremy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just there and I was just Googling like healthy restaurants, and all these vegan restaurants popped up. There's like so many vegan restaurants there, and it's still a thing. I don't know how long it'll take for those tides to turn, but I do know that the vegan movement was at its peak a couple years ago, and it's on decline, while the carnivore movement, when you just look at like Google searches, people are searching more about the carnivore diet and less about the vegan diet. So there's a tide that is turning these days.
Yeah. Well, it just goes back to our political situation as well. When things get so twisted and turn so far one direction, and people understand like, oh, wow, maybe this isn't the way that things are supposed to be. Like, things are not thriving right now, whether it's with our health, whether it's with our country's economy, right? All of these things. And you're a Seinfeld fan.
Yeah, of course.
It's like Costanza, like the opposite, right? If shit is not working in your life, just try taking a complete 180 and trying the opposite, and see how that goes. And you'll probably get better results.
That's right.
And I think that's a powerful lesson from our boy George.
The Costanza effect.
Yeah. And what about cooking with extra virgin olive oil?
Yeah, let's get into that, right? Because for years I would say do not cook with olive oil because it has a low smoke point. But now I have a different thought on this because there was a study that a really good study from New Zealand. They took the 8 most popular cooking oils. So a lot of the seed oils were there, but they had extra virgin olive oil, and they did 2 different trials. They did 364 degrees Fahrenheit, where they cooked it and fried it for 6 hours at that temperature, each of those oils. And then they just used a higher temperature, I think 456 degrees Fahrenheit, for a few minutes. Then they tested, okay, which of these oils became oxidized and damaged. So they looked at smoke point, they looked at stability, and they looked at the most important metric called polar compounds. So the more oil, the more polar compounds an oil produces after being heated, the more inflammatory it is. That's the most important marker. And the extra virgin olive oil scored the best in terms of the least amount of polar compounds. Here's why. If it's real olive oil in a dark glass bottle, like you talk about, that's extra virgin, there are so many antioxidants in it that even if you heat it, even though it has a lower smoke point, the antioxidants protect it and preserve it. So you can cook with olive oil as long as it's real extra virgin olive oil. Coconut oil was second. Olive oil that was not extra virgin was third. And all the seed oils scored the worst. Of course, they produced like the most amount of those polar compounds. So you can use olive oil to cook with. Now, with that being said, I like using fats to fry in or cook at high temperature. So like beef tallow is my go-to, or butter or ghee is my go-to. I like using olive oil for like salad dressings and dips. And have you tried it in your coffee yet?
Olive oil in my coffee?
Yeah.
In my coffee?
Yeah,
No.
put it in your coffee. Yeah, sometimes I put it in my coffee.
Really?
Yeah, interesting.
Oh, no, I've never
taste.
tried that.
It's a great way to enhance the antioxidants in the coffee. So
wow.
I like to, personally, I don't like to heat my olive oil that much just because I like to preserve those antioxidants. But if you use it to cook your eggs in, it's fine. As long as it's a real olive oil.
By the way, if there's anyone that's questioning anything you're saying right now, or they're like, yo, this dude's full of shit, or he doesn't even embody what it means to be healthy. Bro, the amount of information that you're able to disseminate and share, whether it's all the studies, the research, everything is impeccable. And that's just a testament to your lifestyle.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you're just dialed in cognitively. And so many people right now are suffering with things like brain fog, and they just think it's normal to feel mediocre and average and lack energy and lack focus. That's not normal. You were actually born to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
So I think adopting these protocols we're talking about, adding healthy fats, removing the seed oils, removing the plastics, removing all the environmental toxins like lead, mercury, glyphosate, potentially adding a little microdosing in your life. Like these are the changes that are going to actually impact your entire physiology and your brain. Like this is your supercomputer.
That's right.
You know, and it's crazy. Like I cracked my screen a couple of days ago on this phone, and I'm like, shit, am I going to have to get a new phone, bro? Because like, as you know, it's important for people like you and me to have a good quality phone.
Yeah.
But what I realized also, every time I go to the Apple store, I'm always blown away by the amount of people that are constantly updating their iPhone. They're getting the latest edition. And those same people are likely not updating their most important supercomputer, which is your brain.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I think we just got to get our priorities aligned. But like, it's a true testament to the lifestyle that you embody, that you're able to really show up in the way you show up as.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you.
No, I mean, like, bro, it's on some real shit. There's not many people that can really just communicate in that way and have all of these different references on top of mind. What are some other things in terms of neurological health that you'd recommend for people to implement in 2025, whether it's a couple supplements or a couple simple lifestyle hacks? What are some things people can do?
Yeah, well, I mean, olive oil is great for the brain. I mean, you have a lot of content on that. Definitely get in your daily dose of olive oil and put it in your coffee. Try it out. It's actually tastes pretty good. I like the way it tastes in my coffee. Coffee is also a great antioxidant, right? If you find the right source, organic. If it's the wrong source, that's where, like you mentioned, the studies that show coffee causes disease, coffee is healthy for you. I mean, not all coffee is created equal, right? If you're going to Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts and Peet's Coffee, like that's inflammatory, glyphosate mold, heavy metals. I'm not talking about that coffee. I'm referring to organic coffee, great for the brain. One of the best things you can do for your brain is to move your body, to walk, to run, to strength train. You build BDNF, as you mentioned. The more you move your body, you build this brain fertilizer, BDNF. As you mentioned, you could get that with microdosing as well. But exercise is incredible. It's free and it's cheap. And if you do it outside in nature, you get a nitric oxide boost. You get vitamin D production, which is important. It's a hormone and it's an antioxidant and a vitamin. So movement is great. Supplement-wise, I love creatine. Creatine is great for the mitochondria. And you asked a question about neurological health. Well, the brain has the most mitochondria. So anytime you take something or do something for your mitochondria, the brain will benefit the most because it has the most mitochondria. And creatine helps with mitochondrial health. I take about 7 grams a day of creatine, and my female clients take about 3 to 5 grams of creatine per day. It's safe, it's cheap. You could have it in a fasted state, in a fed state. Great for exercise performance, exercise recovery, muscle building, but in terms of neurological health, great for the brain. So I would recommend that. Getting into ketosis is also great for the brain, just burning fat instead of sugar. If you're burning sugar instead of fat, you're going to create type 3 diabetes. That's what Alzheimer's is being called, type 3 diabetes, right? You're going to create your dad knows a lot about this. So you want to make sure you're fat adapted. Other supplements would be, I don't know, there's so many things I could throw. I would throw in a high quality mineral supplement. Like, have you tried Shilajit before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shilajit's legit.
It is.
Shilajit
to quit.
Yeah. I haven't done that in a while, though.
I put it in my coffee. I had it this morning. Yeah. I put that in my coffee too.
Do you use like a liquid dropper or a paste?
I use it's like a sachet from a company called Mana Vitality.
Okay.
And it's a liquid that I just put in my coffee. Now, it tastes disgusting.
It's very earthy.
Very earthy. The one that I have is a combination of Shilajit, which they get from the Himalayan mountains, and Ormus, which they get from the Dead Sea. Both of them are like super concentrated minerals that are highly absorbable. So I put that in my coffee and stir it in there. But that's great for the mitochondria because the mitochondria run off of minerals and amino acids. So if you could get high quality minerals like Shilajit, a non-contaminated version, great for neurological health.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think just I want to give people just tools because again, there's so much noise out there. And I think this couple hours can just be a safe space for people to drop in, listen, and try some of the things we're talking about. And we'll reference all the studies and research that you're mentioning in the show notes because I think it's important that people also do their own research.
Yeah.
And fact check themselves.
Please. Yeah.
What's that process been like, the last few years as your social media's grown a lot and you say some of these things that others might deem controversial, right? And whether it's like a reaction video or whether it's people hating on you in the comments, how has that process been of like receiving that feedback? And do you laugh at it? At first, did it bother you at all? I'm curious to know what that process has been like for you.
Yeah, you've gone through it too, probably more than me. At first it would bother me. I remember in 2018 when I started getting these videos from like Lane Norton and other people that were making these videos about me. Really bothered me. I got all these comments and then messages and hate, like really nasty messages, which I'm sure you've seen before. And it did bother me. Now doesn't bother me a second, right? I actually think it's part of the rite of passage that like you're growing. And when I don't hear anything, when it's crickets for like over a few weeks or months, I feel like I got to do something to grow faster because these reaction videos and getting hate, it's part of the process as long as you're growing. You know this. So dude, does not bother me a second because I am confident and convicted in who I am as a human being and what I teach, and I know it works. I really think that these individuals that create these reaction videos to us have the wrong target, right? They should be going after big pharma. They should be going after big food. They have the wrong target. Like, I understand that it grows your following fast to do that.
Yeah.
Not my style. I know it's not your style. Like, that's not who I am. That's not how I want to grow my community. Because in reality, if that's your style, then your community is a whole bunch of angry people as well. And you've seen it, so you tell us your experience.
Well, I mean, that's the thing that always kind of, I don't know, it kind of just confused me, especially when it's someone obviously if it's some faceless person behind a keyboard, it's like, okay, this person's in a really dark place if they're just talking shit. They're taking time to consume your content and then they're wasting their valuable energy, their life force energy to just write something malicious. I just honestly send love to that person and hope that they can find some healing in their life so they can actually start creating rather than just consuming and spreading venom.
Yeah.
But when it's someone like Lane Norton or someone with like a big following who's has a respectful reputation, yeah, man, I'm kind of just like, for me, I feel like they have unaddressed trauma and emotional shit that they haven't processed. That's where my head goes. Because if you're really in a good place in your life where you are operating from love and you're operating from a place of wanting to be of service and impact, it just seems counterproductive to be wasting your energy on trying to hate on someone who's also doing good in the world, right? Like there's certain, if someone says something that's just like so outrageous and you see an opportunity to like clarify the truth and do a reaction video, that's a little different. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, man, I think it's like, I wrote this quote down that really resonates with me. Great leaders have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds.
Yeah.
And I think that's so true. As you step into your authentic expression, as you step into your leadership, as you become really confident and connected to your mission and vision for the world, you're going to receive hate. You're going to receive backlash. And that is just a sign that you're on the right path and to keep fucking going.
That's right.
Because if, there's a period of my life that I think stems from this fear of abandonment I had from losing my brother in my life and him kind of going down a path of drugs and alcohol and not really having a relationship with him for 15 years. So I had this fear of abandonment, this wound. And after spending a lot of time analyzing this and how it impacted my life, I realized that it created a people pleaser. I was always wanting to be liked by people, so I wouldn't speak my truth. I would tell them what they wanted to hear. And that harmed certain relationships. It kept me in romantic relationships for too long because I didn't have the courage to end things. And it showed up in different areas of life. But the whole point being, because I know a lot of people are watching this and it's one of the most common things I see, just like with my community. And that's why I'm launching this Unleash Your Impact offer, right? Because I think one of the most important things and aspects on this healing journey is actually activating your throat chakra, becoming more confident, speaking your truth unapologetically, being your most authentic self, and giving less fucks about the opinions of other people.
Yeah.
Like if someone like you sees one of my videos and they're like, and there's something wrong that I say, like I know you, like I respect you so much. But you would expose me like on the internet, you would be like, yo, Jeremy, I think actually you might've misspoke here or something like that. It's just interesting how it's just not how I operate.
Yeah, same.
It's like, I'm getting better at receiving feedback because there's a lot of things I want to improve and always work on in my life. It's just about how to deliver the feedback, right? Like, what if Lane Norton just messaged you, hey buddy, like, I kind of disagree with you here. Like, do you mind if I do a reaction video? I'm sure you'd be like, oh, fuck, like, okay. But it's just kind of interesting, bro. It's just weird how the world we're living in works. It's a blessing and a curse. But I think if there's one thing we've learned in the last 4 years, the truth will always prevail. It might take a month. It might take a year. It might take a decade. But how ironic is it that RFK is now the director of Health and Human Services? How ironic is it that the same doctor from Stanford who was getting banned and canceled from everywhere for speaking out against the vaccine is now actually the director of the NIH, I believe.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Who's
like
that?
he has like a Indian last name, but
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, the guy that they went after with the stance on vaccines. Yeah,
right. So the point being,
wild.
yeah, bro. Like the point being is I'm always reminding myself that the truth, like, is it in the Bible? Like the truth shall set you free.
Mm-hmm.
It's so true, bro. Like the truth always comes out. And that's why I believe in just being authentic and transparent from the get-go, because I know everything's going to get exposed.
Mm-hmm.
In the world we live in, you can't really hide shit.
Especially with social media and all the cameras and all the footage. Yeah, you can't.
Yeah. And people are waking up though. That's one thing is like, I really believe like the amount of Mountain Valley Springs water bottles I see now, it's become mainstream. People are actually aware of the negative impact of consuming from a plastic water bottle. Mm-hmm. Understanding that all of those chemicals, those endocrine disruptors in the plastic are leaching into the water. And then you drink that water, it leaches into your bloodstream and it impacts your hormones, your mood, your energy levels, everything. And that's why you'll never see Ben or I drinking from plastic. Speaking of plastic, crazy statistic I heard from Ben Azadi, actually, on the Metabolic Health podcast, Metabolic Freedom podcast. Sorry. So the average American is consuming a credit card of plastic every single week.
That's right. Yeah, that's a study from the University of Newcastle, and you could Google that. They eat about 3 to 5 grams of plastic each week, which is the size of a credit card. So yes, the average American is eating a credit card's worth of plastic every single week. And like you mentioned, that goes into our testicles, it goes into our arteries, it goes into our fat cells. These are obesogens. So where are we getting them from, right? We're getting them from plastic water bottles, like you mentioned. We're getting them from Tupperware that people put in their microwave. I got news for you. Just because a plastic Tupperware says microwave safe, that just means it won't melt and explode in the microwave. Doesn't mean it's safe to eat out of it. It's still leaching an extraordinary amount of plastics into your food. If you store food in plastic Tupperware in your fridge, that's leaching into the food, especially if that food has fat in it. Plastic cutting boards are also, you're losing bits of plastic that go into your food. So you want to drink out of glass as much as possible. You want to use glass Tupperware. You want to avoid any plastic cutting boards and use a wood cutting board. And you want to just make sure you're saying no to cash register receipts, by the way. And I know it's not plastic, but there's more BPA, about 2,000 times more BPA in a cash register receipt than a can of food. And what happens when you go to Whole Foods or the gas station and they ask, do you want your receipt? And you say yes, you grab it. That BPA goes into your bloodstream right away. People put it in their pocket, the receipt, and then they'll go into their pocket later filled with BPA. Women, you probably have seen this, put it in their bras, their receipts, creating potentially a risk of breast cancer in the future if that happens over time. So you want to say no to receipts. You want to drink out of glass because these are called obesogens. These are toxins that actually go into your fat cells, create larger fat cells. And if there's not enough room, it creates new fat cells. And then you try to lose weight and you can't lose weight because you have all these toxins stored up in your body. So we live in a plastic generation. You want to use glass as much as possible.
Yeah. The receipt thing is funny. I filmed a video that went pretty viral like a few months ago. And I was at Whole Foods.
Of course.
And it was like, she asked, do you want the receipt? And I was like, and I just like grabbed it and then I like put it away. And the comments were so funny, bro. It was like, this guy definitely voted for Biden. It was like, just because it's like, it appears that you're just so soft, but it's one of those things that I think it's just about being intentional, bro. And honestly, I'll bring this back to, I mean, I know you haven't experienced mushrooms, right?
Right.
Has Natasha?
No.
Really? Interesting. I'm kind of surprised she hasn't. I feel
really?
Like, yeah, I feel like, I don't know.
I think she would be open to it.
Potentially, yeah. But one of the really interesting things about mushrooms, and one of the biggest areas where I think mushrooms help people, is they heighten your self-awareness. You become very conscious of the unconscious. For example, You might be drinking from a plastic water bottle and be like, why am I doing this? Why am I consuming this poison? You might be eating foods that are laced with seed oils and be like, no, this does not serve my temple. This is not aligned with my highest self. You might be sat at your computer and be like, why am I staring at a screen all day indoors? And you might take yourself out for a walk in nature. So one of the beautiful things that mushrooms have opened up for me and a lot of the people I work with is just heightening our self-awareness and understanding, oh, wow, these little decisions that I'm making every day might not actually be best for me. Let me start making some changes. And I don't think you should need mushrooms to facilitate those changes. But sometimes, bro, in the day and age that we live in, we all get stuck. We all get stuck in this AI world that is doing its best to disconnect us, right? And yeah, that's one of the cool things.
That is very cool, bro.
I notice it every time I do a small dose of mushrooms, not a microdose, a little bit more, I always make some sort of positive change in my life. Like most recently, a month or so ago, I was just in my apartment and I came home from the beach and I was like, dude, my place is just cluttered. Like, why don't I have candles here? Why don't I have incense? Why don't I have more plants? This is my home. Like, this is my sacred temple, and I'm not even treating it as such. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I feel like it just puts a magnifying glass to certain areas of your life, and it's like, oh shit, this is an opportunity to really improve. This is an area where I can get better. So
it's very cool.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, no, I think it's valuable. It's a valuable tool. Do you think you'll ever be open to that? Potentially trying psychedelic?
I'm not closed off to it. No.
Because you've done that spray that Dr. Laurent, is it Laurent?
Dr. John Laurent's, with hop and nicotine.
And you like that?
Yeah, I still use it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
But it's pretty intense.
I know. I remember when you first did it. Some people have some crazy reactions to it too. So I don't let anybody use it anymore. But yeah, me and Natasha use it often. But it's different than doing mushrooms. It's different. I mean, there's the hop in it, so it has tobacco and it has nicotine. And nicotine is a nootropic. Nicotine is a mitochondrial uncoupler. Nicotine can be terrific. So it has essential oils. It has oxytocin in it. So it puts you in this like parasympathetic, relaxed state. So it's called Zen because of that. But it's different than the mushrooms. I don't think it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's way different.
But yeah, I do that. I do it frequently. There's a quote that says, "From abundance, they took abundance, and what remained was abundance." No, there's no fair. It's unlimited.
Yeah, we can talk about that. One of my favorite notions too is, I feel like we all want abundance. We all want love. We all want health. We all want wealth. And all of those things already exist. It's just about the blockages we create within ourselves that prevent us from actually receiving them. Like everything that you or I desire in this life already exists in the quantum. It's just about becoming a vibrational match.
That's right.
And a big part of that is becoming worthy enough to actually receive it. And I know for me personally, that's kind of the biggest thing that prevented me oftentimes in the past from actually receiving love, abundance, impact, freedom, fun, joy. All of those things were inherently right in front of me, but I prevented certain emotional blockages from fully receiving them. And I think a lot of people, especially men, man, like one of the biggest wounds that we have as men is that we're not enough, especially in a place like Miami. I know you've been in a committed relationship for the last decade, but in a place like Miami, and I have friends who, provide so much for their partner. And a lot of times you just see, like I was actually joking with this girl who's a friend of mine, amazing, beautiful woman. And and we were like planning to hang out, right? And she's like, sorry, I didn't respond. Like someone invited me on a yacht last minute. And I was like responding to her. I'm like, that's just such a Miami thing. It wasn't even a weekend, bro. It was like a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, I guess this is going to be hard to compete with because I can't offer you a yacht, but I can offer you a lot of other amazing things.
That's right.
And at the end of the day, I think presence is the greatest gift that we can offer anyone, especially our romantic and intimate partner.
True.
Is like giving 100% of our presence, our attention. And I'm curious to know, in your journey the last 10 years with Natasha, what would you say are 2 or 3 of the biggest keys to sustaining and creating this beautiful partnership? Because I don't know what the number is now, and I know you guys aren't married yet, but I think it's 58% of marriages end in divorce. And then those 42% that sustain, maybe 80% of those marriages aren't even thriving. They're just settling. There's a lack of growth. There's a lack of connection. There's a lack of intimacy. There's a lack of passion. And I'm curious to know for you, what would you say are the biggest keys in terms of sustaining and building that long-term intimate relationship?
Yeah, it's a really important question. I would say the first one would be understanding that people are open to changing, meaning your partner is open to changing, but they will resist being changed, right? So people are open to changing, but they are resisting being changed, right? So I remember in the beginning of our relationships, I'm somebody who reads, I study, not watching TV. She was kind of the complete opposite when we first started going out. So I tried to change her, right? I started to, like, why are you watching Netflix for 4 hours? Why don't you pick up a book? Or I started to say these things, and it created, like, of course, these like arguments. So I realized when I started to force a change, she resisted that. But when I just went about my life and she maybe got inspired by something that I'm doing, and I allowed her to change, but it was her decision, there was no argument. It was like we're both on the same page, right? So that's the first lesson, like not forcing her to change, letting her change whenever she chooses to do so. And if she doesn't, still loving her no matter what. That was probably a really important, valuable lesson for me. The second one was that she was really closed off the first probably year because she had dated so many guys who treated her wrong, and she was just waiting for like the curtain to drop on me, right? She was waiting for like, who is this nice guy, to reveal that he's actually an asshole, and like she was just waiting for that. So she was really closed off. And I remember like a year into the relationship, she was still closed off, and I was just telling her like, you're just gonna need to trust me until I like prove otherwise. Like, you know, this is who I am. There's nothing that I'm hiding. Like, and you just got to trust me unless I show you otherwise, unless you see me lie to you or act a different way. But you're not going to see that because you're seeing who I am, right? So having like an authentic conversation and helping open her up a little bit really changed our relationship. And the last thing is like the boundaries thing, right? I remember when COVID started coming around and the vaccines rolled out, she was working for Norwegian Cruise Lines. And what happened to the cruise industry? Like they were destroyed, right? So she was working from home, and then the vaccine started getting rolled out, and then there became a time where they were like, okay, we could come back to the office at Norwegian, which is right here in Doral, their offices, but you could only come back if you're vaccinated. And you know my stance on the vaccine, it's like, you know, I didn't get it. I'm not going to tell anybody to get it or not get it, but it's like, it should be your decision. Like I'm against forcing anybody to get it. So she was like, I need to go back to work. I'm going to lose my job. And I'm like, look, Natasha, like I love you, but you know my stance on the vaccine. And if you choose to go back to work and get the vaccine just to go back to work, like this is going to be an issue in our relationship. Like I set a hard boundary with her. I'm like, this is going to be a problem because it goes against my belief and everything that I teach. And it's just, for me, I would feel disrespected. So I set the boundary, right? I communicated to her, and it wasn't easy. It was really uncomfortable. But she started to understand that, you know, that makes sense. Like she understood why I felt that way. And because I never really am that like my foot down. Like I'm really flexible and open. But with this, I was like, I had my foot down. So she ended up not getting the vaccine and not going to her job, quitting her job, getting a better job that paid more, and it was virtual, right? So all worked out, right? So those are probably the top three things. I mean, I'm sure those are more, but those are the things that came to my mind when you asked the question.
Yeah, that first one's really interesting because I 100% agree. You can't force change on someone. I remember when I was diving deep into all of this nutritional information and my dad still loved his 2 or 3 Diet Cokes every day. I was like, Dad, my man, like that aspartame in the Diet Coke is just not good for your gut. It's not good for your brain. You know, I don't think you should drink it. Like, how about some more water? And that didn't facilitate any change. And as soon as I came from a place of love and compassion and just telling him like, yo, Dad, you know, you're going to be a grandpa someday. And I want you to be the best version of yourself, the healthiest version of yourself. And I don't think that Diet Coke is serving you. And I showed him studies of aspartame and other artificial sweeteners and how they affect the gut. And that's what actually woke him up, is bringing more love, bringing more research, because he's a doctor, and bringing more emotion to it. Like, don't you want to be the best version for your future grandkids? How it seems kind of tough though to know, like, obviously you have this love for this person and you want them to want to change. But if you don't see those changes happening, right? Is it a place of like, okay, I'm just going to accept this as it is? There's got to be certain things that are non-negotiables, like you said, with the jab. I'm curious to know, like, if she chose to get the jab, like, what do you think would have happened?
Yeah, I don't think we would be together. Yeah, it would have been a big problem. It goes against everything I believe in, my philosophy, what I teach. It's like if she started a business that created like seed oils, right? It's like completely against my thought process and belief system. So we probably wouldn't be together. But thankfully we didn't have to cross that road.
Yeah. I also want to just dive deep, not super deep, but we wanted to talk a little bit more about thoughts.
Yeah.
Creating your reality. Before that though, how old were you when your father passed away?
I was 29.
You were 29.
Yeah.
So like 10, 11 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, a lot of people will experience a tragic experience like that, their mom or dad passing away, and they'll be devastated and they won't be able to bounce back. I feel like one of the beautiful things you've been able to do is really transmute that pain into your purpose. And you use the obstacle as an opportunity to really lean even more into health, into your mission, etc. What was that journey like? You know, maybe initially when it happened, and how do you think that shaped you the last decade into who you are today?
I mean, initially I was angry and very sad and depressed. You know, you only get one dad, you only get one mom, right? So 29 years old, I lose my dad to the complications of diabetes, suffered a stroke, was paralyzed for 9 months. It was really, really challenging. I operated a CrossFit gym here in Miami. I remember driving back and forth from the CrossFit gym, and very difficult seeing my dad in that state, like literally shrinking before my eyes every week I visited him. And when he passed, there was a wave of emotions. I mean, part of me was like relieved. I was so happy that I no longer have to see him in pain and suffering. He's not in pain anymore. But the majority of me was angry. I was sad. I had a whole bunch of questions, right? Why didn't his doctors communicate with me that he could reverse his diabetes? Like, why were there no talk or discussions about like his diet change? There was none of that. It was all about managing his diabetes, not reversing it. So I was angry. I was angry at the medical system. I was angry at his conventional doctors. And, you know, they would give me a list of foods, because every Tuesday I would take my dad to Publix, the grocery store here in Florida, and I would look at that list of foods that his doctors approved, and I would buy it for him, right? Not knowing any better. And it was like Fiber One bars, Gatorade Zero, these protein, like the Premier protein shakes, like all these artificial crap, right? That I had no idea I was buying my dad like things that were contributing to making his condition worse. So I was angry, bro. I was pissed. I was depressed. I was sad. And I had a lot of questions, right? So out of that anger rose curiosity, right? Like, why did this happen to my dad? Why are so many Americans unhealthy? Why is diabetes on the rise? Why was it called adult onset diabetes, but so many children started getting it? Now it's called type 2 diabetes. Why are children getting it, right? So it raised curiosity, right? So out of that pain led to a purpose, led to a promise, and it led to this fire and this mission that I have today. And one of the missions that I have, of course, is to educate 1 billion people. I want to educate and inspire 1 billion people, help them realize how incredible their human body is. But within that mission is a new mission that you don't know about, but I'll share right now. And that is to reverse type 2 diabetes in 1 million people in the next 10 years. To be the biggest case study ever done on naturally reversing type 2 diabetes and shoving that in the conventional wisdom of diabetes and big pharma's face and saying, we don't need your medication to manage your diabetes. We have a case study of 1 million people where we reversed it in 10 years with natural methods, right? So this is going to be the biggest thing that's ever been done on diabetes, bro. But that would have probably never spawned if it wasn't for my dad's struggles and death. But one of the things, Jeremy, that you asked me offline here if I get angry these days. There's things that make me angry, but it's short-lived, right? I mean, you're an aware person, right? You understand when you're in a negative state. I understand when I'm in that state too. And one of the lessons that I learned that always stuck with me was from Michael Beckwith. Are you familiar with his work at all?
Yeah, a little bit.
So he has, one of the things that I learned from him that always stayed with me is this three-part solution to owning your life, right? So he said, when something happens to you, the first step is this. It is what it is, accept it. Either it's going to control you or you're going to control it. That's the first step. It is what it is, accept it. The second step is harvest the good. There's always a good in a situation, and God's always good. There's always a blessing. There's always a positive to every negative. So harvest the good. The third step is to let go, forgive everything else, right? And forgive means to let go and abandon completely, right? So I live my life by those 3 steps, Jeremy. When something happens, it is what it is, accept it. Number 2, harvest the good. Number 3, let go and forgive, right? So to give you an example, like anytime something happens in my life that makes me angry, I think about the 3-step process and I get out of that angry space. Harvest the good, let go, forgive, right? It's not going to control me. It may control me for a minute or 5 minutes, but it's not going to be a day or a week or a month or the rest of my life. Like so many people are having something control them from when they were 7 years old or 15 years old. So I get angry, but it's very short-lived, and I do that 3-step process and I'm out of that state right away.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I realized the last maybe 18 months, there's so many different external things that happened that I just felt were so unjust and unfair. My TEDx talk that I dedicated so much time and energy never got put out. My TikTok was banned at like 1.4 million. It's since come back, but it's like shadow banned and all of those things. And other things as well, where I just felt betrayed by certain people in my life. And I realized that I never actually gave myself the time to feel my feelings and process them fully. I was just like, okay, on to the next one, which can be great, but not if you're just suppressing the anger down.
Yeah.
And the last 3 or 4 months, man, I really have just been on this journey of sitting with a lot of the feelings and vibrations that aren't necessarily positive and seeing how those have shown up and affected other areas of my life. And it's really just been a process of, like you mentioned, letting go and also saying thank you. Thank you for all of the painful lessons, because I know ultimately they're going to be a powerful part of my story. And maybe some of those things haven't fully unfolded yet, but that is really powerful that you have a process to let that shit go early on. Because yeah, man, the truth is, like, you go to Tony Robbins, you go to an ayahuasca journey, like so many adults are actually just children with adult costumes on. They have so much emotional baggage, emotional trauma that they've never actually fully healed from. And that's what generational trauma is. You have these things that happen during your life and your childhood. You never fully heal from it, and you just pass it down to your kid. And that's why so many people who commit really heinous crimes like abuse, violence, alcoholism, whatever, they're literally getting it passed down from their parents, their grandparents, and they're never actually doing the work to heal themselves. And that's why I'm so committed to this work for myself, is like all the shit that I have that isn't necessarily mine, I don't want to pass it on to my kids. I want to do the work to actually create generational health. You know?
I love that, bro.
Yeah. Like that's,
and you're doing it.
Yeah, man. It's a process, but yeah, I'm loving the process.
Yeah.
What is something that you wanted to touch on that we didn't dive into yet? I know you wanted to potentially dive deeper into thoughts, maybe the new book.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you feel called?
Yes, thoughts, right? So the new book is called Metabolic Freedom. They could order it now. If you go to metabolicfreedombook.com, they could pre-order it now. There's some gifts for anybody who pre-orders it, but it's out May 13th, 2025. In that book, in Metabolic Freedom, there's a chapter 10. It's all about how your thoughts create health or disease. And it gets into the origins of the placebo effect. Most people understand, they've heard of the placebo effect, but I write about the origins of the placebo effect. And it started in World War II. So there was a doctor named Dr. Henry Beecher. This story is crazy. He was working in a medical tent with the United States Army, and all these soldiers were getting shot at, bombs were exploding, so they had their limbs blown off, bullet wounds. They were coming to this medical tent, and Dr. Beecher was attending to them, and he would give them morphine to stabilize them, calm them down, transfer them to the hospital, perform surgery, save their life. But in this medical tent, one of these days, they ran out of morphine. They completely ran out of morphine, and the nurse on staff didn't know what to do. She was freaking out. So she put saline solution, salt water, in the needles. She told Dr. Beecher, I'm giving you more morphine. It was just salt water. He had the belief he had morphine, and he would tell the soldiers, I'm giving you morphine. You're going to feel better in a matter of seconds. You're going to stabilize. We're going to take you to the hospital and save your life. So he would inject them with saline solution. They were thinking they were getting morphine, and most of these soldiers survived because they thought they got morphine. Now, the war ended, and then Harvard studied what happened in this medical tent, and that's where the placebo effect started. That's where they started studying this placebo effect, right? That's the origin. That's how powerful the mind works. But the mind could work against you as well, and that's called the nocebo effect. So in the book Metabolic Freedom, chapter 10, I share a story about this railroad employee from the 1960s, bro. This is a crazy story. He was working on a train station, and he was working inside of a refrigerator cart. And it was late at night, 11 p.m. All of his coworkers left for the night, and this guy got locked in that railroad cart, the refrigerator cart. And he was banging, but all of his employees left, and he was cold. And he knew that nobody was coming back until the next morning. So he started writing on the wall, kind of his documenting his journey that night. At 11:30 p.m., he said, I'm stuck here. Nobody's coming for several hours. I don't know if I'm going to survive tonight. At 1 a.m., still here, freezing. I have no way to warm myself up. 3 a.m., shivering. I think I'm going to freeze to death. 7 a.m. rolls around. They open up that refrigerator cart. The guy was dead. He had hypothermia. He froze to death. Okay, but here's the interesting thing about the story. The temperature apparatus in that room that he was looking at had been malfunctioning, and it never got below 55 degrees Fahrenheit. He thought it was much colder than that, and his thoughts created hypothermia. His thoughts created death, dude. So if your thoughts are that powerful,
Wow.
imagine what they can do to work for you, right? So you got to be really aware of your thoughts. Your thoughts will serve you, or they will create disease, right? So I think it's so important to surround yourself with the right environment, because your environment determines your thoughts, determine your decisions, etc. So yeah, those are a couple stories. There's a few more in the book that I talk about, but dude, aren't those stories crazy?
That second one, I didn't think you were going to go there with the nocebo. And I mean, that's just really powerful to wrap your head around. And it's also, I'm just thinking about this like in my own life too. And I think oftentimes it's so true when you go to an experience and you try something and you actually have a positive expectation, like you're much more likely to get that.
Yes.
I see it with, for instance, we'll just use microdosing as an example. Like people who go in and they're like really optimistic. Like, I think this is really going to help optimize my brain, my focus, my ability to be present.
Mm-hmm.
They usually have a better experience. But then there's also the people who are like, I've tried all of these things. Nothing has worked. After one time microdosing or 2 times trying microdosing, they're like, I don't feel anything. This is just another gimmick.
Yeah.
Right. And they're creating their reality with these thoughts and expectations. Expectations are also an interesting thing too, because expectations oftentimes are the cause of our suffering. You know, whether it's having certain expectations from a person, whether it's a friend or a romantic partner, and getting disappointed and then getting angry and then having resentment towards that person, when in reality, it was just my own expectations and perceptions that were creating this false narrative of how things should be. And because they didn't go how I wanted them or expected them to, I'm upset, I'm angry, and I'm labeling this experience as bad. And I think it's interesting, I see it from that lens as well. Like the soldiers are expecting themselves to be healed.
That's right.
And like they're going in with that experience. And when you have that mindset shift, it's massive.
Well, and the cool thing about that story about Dr. Beecher with the soldier, he didn't know he had salt water too. Like, so he had the belief and he transferred his belief to the soldier, right? Meaning we could do that to our friends, our family, our community, right? You could do it with your ceremonies. You could transfer, if they lack the belief that they could heal or feel amazing or whatever they're trying to heal, you could transfer your belief to them, right? It's transferable. And the thing with expectations are in the subconscious mind. Wants and desires are in the conscious mind, but what you expect is in your subconscious mind. And a lot of people, they expect bad things to happen to them because it happened to them before, and that's exactly what they get. It's deep in their subconscious mind.
How much of that do you think played a role during COVID, the last 4 or 5 years? People really having that belief, like, oh shit, I'm gonna get sick, I'm gonna die.
Dude, powerful. It played a powerful role in people getting sick. I mean, the flu season, right? There's no such thing. But people get sick in November because they expect to get sick in November, right? Because it's the flu season, right? There's no such thing as the flu season. I'll tell you this. Every Thursday, I have dinner with my mom. Like last night was Thursday. I had dinner with my mom and Natasha. We have dinner in Bay Harbor where my mom lives. And she makes an amazing Persian dinner with that tahdig rice and all the amazing stuff. And this is relevant to the question, by the way. And on she has the television on every time we're eating dinner. Like dining room table, living room, television on. She watches the Hallmark Channel. She loves having the television on. So I noticed that there are TV commercials, obviously. And I'm looking at the TV commercials and I'm like, every commercial I feel like is a commercial from Big Pharma or Big Food. It's like one after the other, going into our conscious mind, subconscious mind, in creating our decisions, etc. So I did some research and I discovered that 75% of all of the TV commercials in the United States are funded by Big Pharma. 75%. And out of the 195 countries in the world, only 2 countries allow Big Pharma to market directly to the consumer, which is us in the United States and New Zealand. That's it. And then the remaining commercials are like fast food commercials, right? All of this goes into our conscious mind, subconscious mind. So with the COVID thing, I remember when the vaccines got rolled out and I went on Google. You know how Google changes their letters to whatever is going on in the world? That day, they changed their letters to the letters having a face mask over them with Band-Aids.
No way.
The day that the vaccine got rolled out, right? I'm aware of this, but 99% of people are not. Where is that going? Right into the subconscious mind, and then they find themselves at Walgreens getting a vaccine or CVS. This is influencing our decision, and it's really evil the way that they do it. Same thing with commercials. Somebody watches a TV show, they have a gun pointed to somebody's head. Your subconscious mind is wide open. Like you were right in that scene, and then boom, commercial break. And it's like this prescription for like Cialis or whatever it is, right into yourself. It creates our decision-making. It creates our belief system. So like you said, with the COVID stuff and getting sick, like the news told you you're going to be sick. The news said it's spreading fast. Like if you're not aware that this is happening, that goes right into your subconscious mind. it creates a decision for you to make.
There's a couple of things that opened up for me too. Number one, I think one of the worst things that you can do for your health and your metabolism and your digestion is actually watch TV, especially the news, while you're eating food, because that is likely going to trigger certain emotions. It's going to put you in a fight or flight state. It's going to put your nervous system in a sympathetic state. But when you're eating, you want to be in a parasympathetic state, so you're able to really digest your food more smoothly. So I remember being a kid and like always watching sports when I was eating. And
Same.
I was so emotionally invested in the outcome. And that probably negatively impacted my health, right? And I think most people are watching TV while they're eating rather than actually being fully present.
It's true.
Be present with the flavors, the smells, the colors, all of that. It matters. It's important. And then also one of the other subconscious programs that these evil food corporations do is the cereal aisle. Like when you go to it, right? Like all the cereals, they're eye level for, a 5 or 6 year old. And
their favorite cartoon characters on there.
Exactly, bro. Exactly. Like Captain Crunch, like you think these characters are your friends. And it's so easy to just grab the cereal box.
That's right.
And be like, hey, I want to hang out with Tony the Tiger tonight.
Right. Yeah.
And
it happens for adults with like LeBron, people who look up to LeBron James endorsing certain products that are inflammatory. It happens with adults too.
That blows my mind. Whenever I see someone like LeBron James, who potentially is a billionaire at this point.
Probably.
Right? Like, why are you selling your soul to have your face on a bag of Doritos or Lay's potato chips? It's like, bro, maybe they gave you 5 million, 10 million, but dude, you don't need that shit. Like, what type of message are you sending to the kids?
Yeah.
Like, it's sad to see people of that stature sell their soul for a couple dollars. I know it's more than a couple dollars, but like to him, 5 or 10 million ain't shit. And it's like, that's your legacy? That's what you want to leave? That's the type of imprint you want to leave, bro? Come on.
Yeah, we wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's funny too, like even Travis Kelce.
Yeah, Mr. Pfizer.
Yeah, Travis Kelce, I think, got $20 million from Pfizer for being in those commercials. And I think he also lost a lot of respect from just humanity.
Yeah, he did.
Anytime you see someone sell their soul for money, that's just the epitome of the Matrix.
Yeah.
It's like you're so disconnected from your values in your heart that you're willing to just do anything as long as there's a paycheck. And then also what that opened up for me, I don't even know why this opened up, but I know you, when you're going through your obesity and your health challenges, you also had ED, right? A little bit, right? And I think because this is 2025, and we want to provide as much value as possible, I think one of the easiest ways to know if you're a healthy man is if you wake up and you have morning wood and your soldier is saluting you in the morning, right? That means you have healthy blood flow. If you have healthy blood flow here, chances are you have healthy blood flow to other parts of your body and you are producing nitric oxide at a healthy rate.
Yeah.
What are a couple things that people can do to really increase their blood flow in 2025?
Well, I'll share what depletes nitric oxide, which depletes blood flow and creates erectile dysfunction and heart disease. Mouthwash, one of the worst things. Antiseptic mouthwash, one of the worst things you can do. It increases your risk of heart disease. It leads to erectile dysfunction. Like, you don't want to do antiseptic mouthwash. Mouth breathing is a problem too. The more you breathe through your mouth, the more nitric oxide is depleted. The more you breathe through your nose, the more nitric oxide is used. So at nighttime when you sleep, a lot of people breathe through their mouth at night. When we're talking, I'm breathing through my mouth because I'm talking. But at night when you sleep, I mouth tape. Do you mouth tape at all?
I was doing it consistently, and then when I traveled, I stopped.
Yeah,
but I need to get back on it.
Yeah, so you want to mouth tape at night if you breathe through your mouth at night. Most people do. You know, if you wake up and you feel like your mouth is dry. Movement is one of the best things you can do to get blood flow and raise nitric oxide levels. If your cholesterol is under 200, you deplete nitric oxide, which leads to erectile dysfunction. So you want to get your cholesterol up, which is the opposite of what you probably thought. But movement and getting outside and getting sunshine. Like if you get movement outside, like you do a lot, that's the best thing you can do for blood flow, hormones, and nitric oxide.
Okay. So a few keys for better boners in 2025. More sunlight.
Yep.
More movement.
Yep.
More healthy fats.
Yeah.
More cholesterol. More egg
hormones.
yolks.
Yep.
And less antiseptic mouthwash and less mouth breathing.
You nailed it.
So really just practicing nasal breathing. That's where we get... That was so... Can I exhale out the mouth or ideally no?
You can. Yeah.
Okay.
Just in through the nose. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the mouthwash thing is funny too. It's another one of those, like those fucking Listerine mouthwashes,
Dude,
bro.
terrible. Scope, Listerine. Oh, I used to use them for years, bro. Years. Yeah, it's not good.
As we wrap this up, because I know we have to beat this Miami traffic. Curious to know maybe your biggest goal for 2025, the next 12 months. If this one thing gets done and gets accomplished, you will feel just very at peace and proud.
It's the book, 500,000 copies sold, New York Times bestseller. I know if I do that, a lot of lives will be impacted. I would really believe in the book. I wrote it in a way where I put everything I know, and I put it in a way where it's easy to understand and implement with the 30-day plan at the end of the book. So when we hit 500,000 sales of the book and it becomes a New York Times bestseller, which is something that I have right here and I read every day throughout the day, I'm so happy and grateful now that my published book, Metabolic Freedom with Hay House, is a New York Times bestseller. I will be really excited when that happens next year.
Let's fucking go. And I think, by the way, before we wrap this up, I mean, these allergy cards, having your goals, your mission, your manifestations on you at all times, like these are just little things that make a massive difference.
It is true.
So yeah, bro, I just want to acknowledge you because every time we connect, every time we sit down and have a conversation, I'm always expanding my mind and I'm always able to witness your growth and transformation. And it's just beautiful to see. You know, it really is beautiful to just see the constant evolution of Ben Azadi and the platform you've created and the relationship you've created and the life you've created. You should be very fucking proud of yourself, bro.
I am, bro. And I feel the same about you, man. I love you. I just love how you are happily dissatisfied with life. You're like grateful but not satisfied. I live a very similar life, and it's been cool growing together with you, bro. You know, we started collaborating in 2019, 2020? I think 2019.
That's wild.
And we've changed so much, as we should, since then. Like we have evolved so much, and I feel like we're just both getting started, and there's just so much to do. So much healing that needs to be done. So I'm grateful to be in the trenches with you, my brother.
Thank you, bro. Yeah, the goal, at least my goal is to become unrecognizable from the version of myself 3 months ago, 6 months ago.
I love it.
And like to just be constantly evolving and growing and shedding the layers and shedding the stories and shedding the bullshit that no longer serves me. And yeah, I feel like I'm just always going to be a student for life because that's what enables us to lead and show up in the most powerful way. If we're not doing the work ourselves, then how do we expect other people to do it?
That's right, bro.
You know?
100%.
So guys, check out the link in the show notes. What was the site for the book?
MetabolicFreedomBook.com. There's a mini course that I give away for free and some exclusive interviews if you pre-order it there.
Guys, pre-order that. It's 2025, baby.
Let's go.
It's time to take your metabolic health to the next level, and make sure to also follow Ben on all the platforms, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. We'll link to everything in the show notes. Much love. Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate you, bro. That was awesome, man.
That's a wrap.
Let's do a quick story. That was awesome, right? This guy went deep.